How's going, guys? Welcome to the channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto was the slave and finds his heritage and built Harem in Star Wars, Part 2. Huge shout out to AmusedLight for this story. If you wants to see awesome fanfiction like this, don't forget to subscribe. Now let's get into the video. If one talked about planets outside of the reach of the Republic, Tatooine is often the first planet that comes to mind. Once a planet full of oceans and rainforests, it is now a husk of its former self, the planet now being known for being a hot, barren wasteland, as well as the poverty and corruption that goes on there. It's also known for Jabba the Hutt being the tyrannical ruler of the planet, with his influence and power being so great that even the Republic does nothing about his open presence there. Mos Eisley was one of the few cities that existed in the wasteland, especially one that had a few spaceports. It was a city full of scumbags in many forms. Bounty hunters, smugglers, fugitives, slave traders, they all roamed free in this city, with murder and sometimes even fate being very common in the city. Overall, much like the planet itself, it was pretty much a lawless land. Inside of Kalman's spaceport cantina, Django and his team were busy killing time by getting some food and drinks while waiting for Dooku's goons to arrive with their money. It was easy to say that some of them were already under the alcohol's influence. This was seen by the 4 remaining weekways, who were clearly drunk out of their minds. They were sitting on the other side of the bar, due to some Twi'lek dancers giving them some sultry looks and poses. They were already trying to suck them dry of their credits, which was witnessed by Django, Boba, Aura Singh, and Cad Bane. Zam volunteered to stay behind at the ship to guard it. After all, you can't ever be too careful in Tatooine. Morons. Cad Bane glared at the weekways, disgusted at their behavior. At this rate, we'll have to drag them back to the ship alongside our credits. My Bane. Aura chuckled at the Duros. Since when were you concerned about the well-beings of others? I'm not. Cad Bane growled at her. I just don't want them attracting more attention to us than we already have. He eyed some of the patrons, who immediately looked away from them. The last thing I want is that idiot Greedo to notice us if he's here. Seriously? Django turned to him. Out of all the bounty hunters in this galaxy, you're concerned about Greedo? He's a slippery bastard. Cad Bane growled as he did not like the Rodian very much. Always a pain in our asses. Boba turned to his dad. What does he mean, Dad? Aura just laughed, tapping on Boba's head. Nothing for you to worry about, Boba. Just drink your milk and be a good boy. She teased the boy while drinking her glass. Boba glared at her lightly, before feeling someone tap on his shoulder. He looked up at his dad, and saw her nod at her. You'll learn soon, Boba. I promise you that. Boba smiled at his father and nodded back at him. Right. Just then, a small beeping sound erupted from their table. They all checked their communication devices, and found that it came from Aura. Answering her comm, she received a quick transmission that ended swiftly. So? They've arrived. Where? Cad Bane asked, eager to finish this job. They just send me the coordinates, Aura replied, putting her device back into her pocket. It's not that far from here. Where? Django was the next to ask. The center port, the big one that never finished construction. That wasn't far from their current location, just a few blocks down the road. Okay, we'll go there, Django said, turning to his son. Boba. Yeah, Dad? Stay close to me, Django finally said, making Boba's eyes widen. Keep aware of your surroundings, and always be ready for your blaster. Oh, okay. Boba nearly squealed with joy, which made Aura roll her eyes in the background, although a small smile could have helped make her way into her lips. They all got up and walked to the exit, with Django walking over to collect the drunken weekways. We're going, Django told them sternly. Get your act together. The pirates groaned and grumbled, but didn't argue with him, reluctantly pulling themselves away from the Twi'leks. Making sure to throw their money, they staggered towards the exit. Unfortunately, unbeknownst to the group, they did indeed attract some unwanted attention. A group of people glared at the group as they left, as they had some unfinished business with some of them. They returned to the slave eye, where Zam was patiently waiting for them. After retrieving the pod, they walked back to the meeting point. To their relief, they managed to get there without any issues, save for the weekways stumbling and babbling, to which they had to remind them to shut up. Eventually making it to their destination, They began to split into small groups, scattering themselves around the meeting point in case it was a trap. Django and Bane were together, scanning the area for either potential enemies or their clients. So Django, Cad Bane tipped his hat. You got something you want to talk about? You can always tell when I got things on my mind, Bane. Django sighed, not denying it whatsoever. You talking about the moment when we found out the target was actually a kid? Bane guessed. Django didn't say anything for a while, before he continued. I still can't believe that all that trouble was just for a kid. A soldier, to be correct, Bane stated. If you read the information about that planet, you would know that the use of children in their military is the norm in their culture. Bane scoffed. Just be happy that we didn't run into one of those brats. Django then turned to the blue-skinned bounty hunter. Would you really shoot one of those kids if you had to? Cad Bane turned towards him, with a blank look on his face. Would you? The two men fell into silence, suddenly unable to answer each other's questions for a moment. I'm just doing this to get paid, Django, Cad Bane finally said, before taking a few steps away from him. I do whatever I need to do to get my credits. He then squinted at him. But what's it with you? You don't care about the boy, do you? Not exactly, Django finally said. It's more about that village. What about it? Bane snorted. Since when were you worried about making enemies? It's just an occupational hazard. No, not that. Django waved him off. I was talking about the whirlpool patch on their shoulders and backs. So? Django was about to go further on the topic, when they were interrupted by the sound of engines. Looking up, they saw a small ship that was growing closer to them. About time they'd showed up, Bane muttered before walking towards the incoming shuttle with the pod, leaving Django on his own as the ship began to descend upon them. The sheathipede shuttle took a moment to land as it turned around, before its landing claws came out, connecting to the ground. The doors slid open, revealing a group of B-1 battle droids. 2 of them stepped out, their blasters in their metal hands, and 6 more soon followed, with 2 of them carrying 2 metal bags of credits. The last one to follow them were 2 Neimoidians in their traditional clothing. Green-skinned and red-eyed, the 2 of them cowered at the gazes of the bounty hunters, which made Cad Bane scoff. Clearing his throat, one of the Neimoidians stepped up to the Mandalorian. You must be the one who goes by Django Fett. He extended his hand, to which Django reluctantly took. I've been informed that you are the one I should meet. You got the credits for us? Django simply asked. Of course, just as your employer has promised. The Neimoidian clicked his fingers. The 2 droids opened the suitcases and revealed a very impressive amount of credit chips. As promised, here are your credits, the Neimoidian said. Now, the child. We got him, Django roughly answered as the Weequay mercenaries started escorting the pod to the middle of the area. Show it to me. Django turned to one of the Weequay and nodded. One push of a button, and the pod opened up, revealing a still unconscious and bandaged Naruto, who was still sedated from Zam's drug. Excellent, the Neimoidian hummed as he inspected the boy. I see you've proven your job well done, bounty hunters. The pay, Cad Bane reminded them, who was growing rather impatient. Of course. He clicked his fingers again, and the droids moved forward, nervously placing the suitcases in front of the bounty hunters for Aura to pick up, before walking back. Lord Tyrannus will be more than pleased by your performance, the Neimoidian complimented as the Weequay pushed the pod to the droids, who closed it promptly. He hopes that you can be of great service to him again. If he needs me to invade another planet with no information about its culture or military to kidnap a kid again, tell him I said no. Django grunted as he turned around, walking towards the exit with the others. The Neimoidian took no notice of the last comment, and turned to the yellow-patterned battle droid. Bring the specimen into the ship. Roger, roger, the droid replied before ordering his troops. You've heard him, move the subject Naruto Uzumaki into the ship. A pair of legs stopped moving. Django froze in place as he heard the last name. Cad Bane turned around to notice his rival wasn't moving. What's the matter, Django? The Mandalorian's helmet slowly turned back towards the ship, staring at the young boy that he had helped send to his doom. Django! Aura called him out. Come on, we've got our credits. Django just continued walking towards the ship, his hand dangerously close to his blasters. Dad? The Mandalorian said nothing as he gazed towards the Separatists. Upon hearing that name the droid mentioned, he turns around and began walking towards the ship, despite being called out. Jango, where are you? Dash. Greetings, my friends. Everyone froze as they looked up at the balcony, seeing a group of armed men standing on the other side of the port. Their blasters and rocket launchers were aimed at them, causing everyone to tense up. Zygerians! Jango growled as his blasters were aimed at them. What do those scumbags want? We want no trouble with you bounty hunters or you separatists, the leader of the group declared. Well, not exactly true with the first one. You see, those drunken fools, he glared at the weakways, who were shakingly aiming their blasters at them, have crossed with us in the past, stealing our shipments of spice. All we want is those idiots, and everyone can go on their merry way. One of the drunken weakways spat at them. Screw you, you slaving bastards! Go back to your bitch queen and tell her to suck it! What did you just say? The Zygerians growled in anger. The drunken weakway pulled out a blaster at them. Eat this! Pew! The guy next to the Zygerian speaker got shot through the chest, shocking everyone. And that's when all hell broke loose, again. Boom! The droids and the Nimodians screamed as they were flown forward, their ship blown up by a rocket launcher, courtesy of the Zygerians. Pow! 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 Pew! 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 Within seconds, the entire landing platform became a battlefield, with missiles and blaster bolts flying like mad. One of the weakways took a bolt to the shoulder, causing him to fall down behind the metal box he was hiding behind. The crap talker, on the other hand, wasn't so lucky, as he got hit by blaster fire first in the gut, chest, and then the head, which ended his life. The other two weakway managed to take cover behind the pillars, and now sobering up a little, their aim grew much better as they grew more determined to survive this battle. Damn bastards took out Nagel! One of the weakway behind the pillar roared before cursing at them. Catch this, you zig bastards! He got out from his cover and started firing at the slavers at the balcony who were forced to take cover. Where the criff are the others? One of the weakways hissed, clutching his shoulder. Meanwhile, Cad Bane and the others were just standing by the sidelines, not trying to get involved in this firefight, but the firefight made their only exit unreachable. Plus, if they tried to escape via flying, they would become an easy target, especially if they had to carry someone out of there. Zam took cover beside Aura behind a box and commented, Looks like we're stuck here. Any suggestions? A blaster shot flew past her, nearly hitting her. Well, this isn't our problem, so I say we let them take care of each other. Aura just shrugged, while keeping her fingers on his blasters. Why get into someone else's business when it's clearly none of ours? Cad Bane, who was ducking behind a cargo box with Boba, noticed that someone wasn't there with them. Anyone seen Jango? Fwum! The familiar sound of a jetpack going off made Boba look out from his hiding spot. Look! He's fighting! The other three bounty hunters turned to look at what Boba meant, and were equally surprised and at awe at what they were seeing. Jango was flying in the air, dodging blaster fire from the Zygerians as he was firing back at them, causing the group to scatter. It's Jango Fett! Somebody kill him! One of the slavers warned. Landing on the ground, he began to dodge and hide from the bullets. His helmet warning him of a threat from above, he looked up and saw a Zygerian aiming a rifle at him. Smirking, he fired a single bolt at his would-be sniper, and he fell from the rooftop, dead before he hit the ground. One down, 3 more to go. Jango thought, his helmet scanning the 3 surviving Zygerians. His eyes widened as he detected one of them holding a rocket launcher, which was aimed directly at him. Dodge this! The Zygerian roared before he pulled the trigger. Criff! Jango thought as he pushed a button on his gauntlet. Fwum! Fwum! Boom! The second the Zygerian launched his rocket, Jango did the same, firing his missile from his jetpack. The 2 missiles collided with each other, creating an explosion that sent people and debris flying in opposite directions. The wounded weakway panted as he could nothing but continue to hide like a coward. He watched as his 2 remaining friends were struggling against the Zigs. He wished he could help them, but his shooting arm was injured, and it hurt like hell to even move it. One of his friends, which was too far to help, shouted, Shehan! You alright? Shehan hissed as he shifted his body. I'm fine. Had better days. Hold on, we're getting you out of here! The Zygerian with the rocket launcher took notice of the shouting, and grinned, turning his weapon toward the pillars the two weakways were hiding behind. He had one last rocket, and he figured that he'd use it on getting revenge for the loss of the spice shipment. Shahan took another peek and saw the Zig with the heavy artillery. Guys, get out of there! Whoosh! Time seemed to slow down for the weakway as the Zygerian fired his weapon, the missile flying towards the pillar. The two weakways screamed as they tried to move out of the way, but it was too late. Boom! The pillar exploded, sending a wave of fire and debris flying everywhere. Shahan covered his ears as the explosion nearly deafened him. Slowly opening his eyes, he coughed as he saw the wreckage. Shaking, his eyes finally fell on the remains of his friends, whose expressions of horror was still etched into his face. Horror turned to rage as Shahan began to see red. You bastards! Shahan roared, grabbing his blaster with his other arm, and aimed at the Zygerians. Pew! 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 Unfortunately, Shahan never shot with his left arm, and thus, his shots never hit their target. Still, that didn't stop him as he continued to fire at the Zygerians in rage. You filthy pirating scum! Do you know who you were stealing from? The Zygerians roared at him from behind their pillars. I don't know, and frankly, I don't give a damn! The last weakway of the group shouted back. The name's Shahan Alama, and I'm gonna kill you all! Come and get me! Why you dash? Pew! A blaster shot flew out of nowhere, hitting one of the Zygerians in the face. Slumping over, everyone turned to look at the shooter, revealing it to be the Mandalorian bounty hunter, who was behind the destroyed shuttle. Pow! 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 Two more Zygerians, who came to reinforce them, fell from the rooftop, with a blaster burn on their chests. Falling with a loud crunch, they continued to groan, to which Django shot their heads to end their life. Clunk! 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 Django turned towards the source of the noise, and his eyes widened at the metal, beeping ball of death. Kaboom! Django was sent flying by the explosion. He landed on his jetpack quite painfully, and it sparked from the damage. One of the Zygerians had thrown a thermal detonator, which would have killed him, had it not for his reflexes and his armor. Doesn't mean it doesn't hurt like hell. Django groaned. He was pretty sure that his Durasteel armor didn't completely protect him, and he was pretty sure that the blast had broken a few bones and scorched his skin. You know, Mr. Fett, the leader of the group walked up to his fallen body. I've never had the pleasure of killing a Mandalorian. Now, not only can I proudly say that I've slain one of your kind, but I can even keep your armor as the trophy. Django tried to move, but his body felt weak, and his armor suddenly felt 1,000,000 times heavier. He struggled to get up, but he failed to even lift his head, his armor now becoming his undoing. The Zygerian smirked, kicking away the Mandalorian's blasters, before he turned back to the pod. I wonder what's so special about that pod anyways that was worth your interference and all this trouble. The Zygerian pondered out loud. I noticed that you could have left with your friends a long time ago, but instead, you chose to stay here. Is it loyalty to your pirate friends, or is it the human in the pod? Django cursed under his breath. His eyes darted to the pod, which was being taken by the surviving Zygerians. Well, the fun ends here. The Zygerian smirked, aiming his blaster at the human's neck. Hey boss, check this out, one of his men said. They made to back behind the pillars when something of interest came up. What is it? He growled, wanting to end this bounty hunter's life. It says this boy is from Elementia. The Zygerian read it out loud, catching the leader's attention. Elementia? His growl turned into a smile of interest. I've heard that those humans are supposed to be super strong. The Zygerian turned back towards the Mandalorian. Looks like this trip wasn't a complete waste after all. Django wished he could do anything. Strangle the bastard. Slit his throat. Shove a thermal detonator into his mouth. But his body was still too hurt to even move his arm, and even if he could, he would never be fast enough to take him on properly. Take it back to the ship, now, he ordered his men. He'll make a fine addition to the spice mines. They nodded before they quickly took off, leaving the Zygerian alone with the injured Mandalorian. If you dare put a hand on the boy dash. PSSH, don't pretend to care about the boy, Mr. Fett. The Zygerian snorted. If he did, he wouldn't be in this situation now, would he? Besides, think of it as a fair compensation for the spice those idiots stole. And with that, he raised his blaster again. Pew! The Zygerian's grin stayed on his face, before he fell over, a smoking hole coming out of his head. Cad Bane and the rest of his crew stepped out of the shadows, with the Duros holding a smoking blaster. We're even now, Django, Bane simply said. Now why don't you go help out your father, boy? Cad Bane's sentence was barely uttered before Boba took off for his father. Dad, are you all right? He asked, worried to death. His father groaned as he struggled to get up. Seeing this, Boba gingerly helped his father to his feet. No, son, I'm not all right. He winced, slowly holstering his blasters after Boba picked them up for him. Noting how Django was clutching at his ribs, Boba immediately come-zam to prepare a back-to-bath. Unbeknownst to him, however, this wasn't the reason why Django said he wasn't all right. What have I done? Django thought wearily, staring at the spot where the pod used to be. Jaster, I hope you can forgive me. A plummet of black smoke was visible in the air, coming out of one of the ports. This, alongside of the firefight that had occurred not that long ago, attracted some attention, since it was rather hard to not notice. Despite this, the people wisely chose to avoid the area for a while, nor were they foolish enough to dig their noses into it. A few minutes after the firefight had ended, a YV-865 Aurora-class freighter just took off. Inside of the freighter was a team of Zygerians, which included the survivors of the fight they had with the bounty hunters. The leader, who was the Zygerian with a purple convert bird on his shoulder, scowled at the survivors, then at the pod. Can someone explain just what the criff happened back there? We took care of those bastards that stole our spice. You know, the guys we told you about from the cantina? One of them explained. Unfortunately, they were in the middle of a business transaction with the separatists, and things got violent. They were with a team, and they gave us a hard time, even killing your second-in-command. Regrettable. Gnar frowned. But at least we sent a message to that slime ball, Hondo. His eyes then traveled back to the pod. That being said, what's with the pod there? Right about that, he replied, pointing at the stolen pod. Open it up! The Zygerian's partner opened up the pod, and carelessly shoved the blond boy out of it. We've found this boy being given to the separatists. Seeing as how those bastards died from the fight, they won't be missing this after all. It's one of those supers from that new planet, Elementia, he explained, with Gnar's expression changing from anger to one of interest. I see. Good work. He nodded at his men, before examining the boy for himself. He inspected the boy, and seeing as how he was in good health, he let out a grin. His eyes then traveled to his stomach, which was now exposed from the fall. Pushing aside the thin, hospital gown, he stared at the strange tattoo that was on the boy's navel. Does the data say anything about these strange markings? His men immediately began to recheck the data. No, sir. It mentions nothing about it. I see. Gnar's expression grew into a smirk. No matter. He'll make a perfect addition to my collection. Sir? I've decided to keep it. Gnar chuckled. He'll be useful in what he's going to do for me now. Put it inside with the rest. One of them grabbed Naruto by the shirt, and started dragging him further inside the ship like a ragdoll. It was then that the ship disappeared from view, entering hyperspace. By that time, Django would have entered his ship, taking a dip into a back-to-tank, while Boba did his best to try to find the Zygerian's ship. However, by the time they even discovered where they had parked their ship, it would be far too late. Crash! Naruto's body was roughly thrown into a large cage. Still unconscious, the boy's neck was now outfitted with a collar. Sleep all you want, boy. Once you wake up you'll be working hard like the rest of them. Gnar sneered to the still sedated boy, before going towards the cockpit, laughing all the way to himself. The cage next to Naruto's was very silent, with the large, purple man inside of it having overheard everything. His green eyes moved to his new roommate, and sighed when he took a good look at the boy. Karabast. Inside the seal, Kurama, who had witnessed everything that was happening so far, frowned at how everything turned out. So this is where the Force led him. Kurama muttered to himself. Interesting. While I can't see into the future like that old fart can, even I can tell that this will lead to something interesting. Could he have done more to help? Sure. While he couldn't do much unless the boy was in life-threatening danger, was wounded, or if Naruto himself was accessing his chakra, he could have still tried to purge the drug out of his system. Remembering Yoda's words, however, he chose not to, wanting to see where this would go. Besides, this was a pretty good way to give the finger to not only that damned Uchiha asshole that used him that many years ago, but also to Konoha itself. We'll see how you grow, Uzumaki. I do want to know whether this place will make you, or break you. In the meantime, let's start getting rid of this stupid drug. And with that, the sewer shook as a pulse of his chakra was sent throughout the boy's body. Gasp! Naruto's eyes shot open, and he sat right up. Clunk! Ow! Naruto hissed, rubbing his head. He banged his head on something, which hurt like hell. Blinking, his eyes widened as he realized that something was wrong. For one, he wasn't in the hospital anymore. 2, he was in a cage, with a collar around his neck. Okay, the last thing I remember was Shizen. No, that wasn't Shizen. Whoever that was, she attacked the nurse with something, and injected something into me. Oh crap. Looks like you're finally figuring it out, kid. A deep voice came from his left. Huh? Startled, Naruto began to look around, searching for the source of the voice. Who said that? Quiet, kid. You don't want to yell in this situation. Also, I'm right next to you. Squinting, his eyes began to adjust in the dimly lit building, or wherever they were. Blinking, he began to realize that he was talking to a large, hairy creature, with strange, green eyes, who smelled kinda bad. Whoa, are you a summoning creature? Naruto asked. The said creature blinked, before raising an eyebrow. Kid, I have no idea what that is, but no. I'm a Lazet, and the name is Garazeb. Garazeb Aurelios. Naruto just dumbly responded, still processing the fact that an ape-like creature was speaking to him normally like a human. Never mind. The Lazet rolled his eyes at the kid, and then looked at the direction of the cockpit. I heard we're going to be working in the spice mines on Kessel, so we'll be stuck together. You can call me Zeb. What's your name? My name? It's Naruto, he told the ape-like creature. Wait a minute. Kessel mines? What's that, and what are we going to do there? Zeb looked at the kid with a raised eyebrow. Never heard of Kessel? Which planet did you grow up in, kid? Elementia, Naruto answered after a second. I guess our planet just made contact with the Republic or something. They're the ones that gave it that name. So you're from that newly discovered planet. Explains a lot. Zeb noted to himself. I'm going to be blunt, kid. We're going to be forced to mine spice for these bastards as slaves. As slaves? Naruto shouted, grabbing at his collar. I can't be. I've got so much to do. I dash. Zap. Ah! Naruto screamed as his collar released an enormous amount of electricity into his body. He fell over, his hands twitching at his sides as he tried to recover from the electrocution. Be silent, boy! One of the Zygerian slavers yelled at Naruto. Naruto's glare never wavered as he stared at the Zygerian in the eyes. Screw you! Zap! Naruto screeched in pain as the collar him again. Hearing his screams put a smile to the Zygerian. After a few more seconds, he let go of the button, allowing Naruto to breathe again. I've learned much about your people, child. The blonde boy, who was still somehow conscious, slowly turned his head towards his tormentor. It's magnificent, really. Your people's culture, the furry man said while petting his bird. I was already planning on going to your planet myself, but you just happened to fall right onto my lap. I will be fully invested in the plans I have for you, child. It won't be long before you'll be bowing to me. Grunting in immense pain, Naruto bit his teeth while staring at him as he was being looked down upon by this man. I don't care what you do, you weird cat. But I will not bow down to anybody. Growling at his persistent attitude, he lifted his small remote and pushed the button. Zap! URK! Another wave of electricity spread throughout his body again, the collar's power trying to force him into submission. Seeing no progress, Gnar decided to raise the power. You will soon learn your place, slave, Gnar told him with a sickening grin. You might have the blood of a warrior, but like everyone, you'll be broken, and I'll make you submit to your betters. And with that, he finally let go of the button. Naruto, who was still on his knees, finally fell over. Gnar leaned in a little, and when he discovered that he was still breathing, he left, satisfied with the results. Meanwhile, Zeb just looked at him with sadness, tugging at his own collar. Jedi Temple. Yoda sat alone in the Jedi Council chamber. Frowning, he began to reflect at the recent developments that was occurring on the two planets of Earth and Elementia. The result was predictable. Many of the independent countries on Earth have either decided to join the Republic or the Separatists. The reason for this divide was due to some of the political problems they already had. Most of the strongest, independent countries have chosen to join the Republic, while the others either joined the Separatists or wished to remain neutral. Elementia held nearly the exact same results. Konoha was the first to join the Republic, followed by Suna, which had recently renegotiated their ties with its former ally, and was also in the process of negotiating with the Republic. Meanwhile, IWA and Kumo had decided to join the CIS within moments after they were given the offer, due to their poor relationship with the Leaf Village. Curie, meanwhile, was still in the midst of its own political war, with both the Republic and the CIS hesitant to enter. Then there was the other, much smaller villages, like Kusa, Taki, and the others. Most, if not all of them, were forced to pick one side or the other, due to their neighboring villages, or the other allies they had, save for Amigakure, who closed themselves off from the rest of the world. This pretty much reflected the current situation of the galaxy, with it being split into 3 factions, with the third being the neutral systems. To make matters worse, the Force didn't seem to be with them at the moment, with more and more visions becoming unclear or blurred. The doors slid open, and Mace Windu entered the room. "Master Yoda." "Master Windu." The small, green Jedi nodded to him. "I need to speak with you," the Master said to him. "It's important." Speak with me here, you can." Yoda nodded, choosing to stay in his seat. "It's about the other Jedi. They're asking questions about the memory holocron you showed us." "Go on," Yoda said. "As you may know by now, many of the Padawans, Knights, and even Masters have been researching in the archives about this. They've discovered that the Sith like Darth Bane have lived in a different era than yours, with Bane in particular belonging in the era of the Old Republic, which was almost 3 millennia ago. Questions everybody has, I assume." Yoda closed his eyes and thought. "Answer, I do have. Unpleasant they are, however." Mace raised his eyebrow at this, before narrowing them, already beginning to guess the answer. Yoda dug into his robes, pulling out the memory holocron. "Forbidden knowledge, the dark side offers," Yoda said, staring at his holocron. "Immortality, some might say, it can offer. Raising the dead, it can also do." "Raising the dead?" Mace Windu's eyes widened. "You're not saying dead those Sith were?" Yoda nodded grimly. "Called them from the grave, that Kaguya woman has." Before the conversation could continue, the doors suddenly opened. "Masters!" They turned towards the doors and saw that it was Padawan Skywalker who just ran in, much to the dismay of Mace Windu. "Skywalker, don't you see that we're in a conversation?" Master Windu sternly glared at the Padawan. "You better have a reason for barging in like this." Anakin took a moment to breathe before rising up. "I'm sorry to interrupt you, Masters, but I came here telling you urgent news coming from the Hidden Leaf Village." Yoda turned towards the Padawan with immediate focus. "It's been attacked by bounty hunters," Anakin informed them. "Their village leader has requested the presence of Master Yoda." Mace Windu turned to the Grand Master, who was now getting up from his seat. "Go now, I must. Join me, if you wish," Yoda offered to his fellow master. "Skywalker, pass this news to your Master Obi-Wan, you must." "I will, Master," Anakin said, watching the Master Yoda leave the 2 Jedi behind to walk on his own. "I will, Master Yoda." Anakin bowed, watching the 2 masters leave. After watching them disappear, he ran to inform the others of this unfortunate news. Inside the seal. Splash! Kurama watched as Naruto's body fell from the dark ceiling. Landing in the water, Naruto's groaned as he began to recover from the torture he had just endured from those beastmen. Meanwhile for Kurama, he was in his meditation position and had his hands clapped against each other with his eyes closed, and the energy spiraling out of him. Staring at the boy's fallen form, Kurama let out a sigh. "It's nothing personal, kid. Even if you asked me to, I'm not gonna help you. Not until you prove me worthy of my help. I don't know if this is part of the Force or not, but unless you can grow stronger from this, I'm not going to step in much. Kurama snorted, a gust of air disturbing the water below him. I've already done enough by giving you the ability to read, speak, and understand basic. Kurama continued, uncaring whether or not the boy was listening to him. From here on out, you're on your own. A pulse of his chakra shot out like a fast wave, and Naruto's body stopped twitching, relaxing as his body began to recover from the electrocution much faster. Just then, Kurama looked up, hearing the voices of the Zygerians growing louder. If you thought that your life has been hell so far, then it's time that you learn the true meaning of suffering. Kurama grunted. I'm counting on you to not die. I'm counting on you to survive, to grow, to adapt, and to strike when the time is right. What you do from there, be it for good or for bad, will be up to you. The voices of the slavers grow louder and angrier, and Kurama knew that he didn't have much more time left to speak his thoughts. You probably don't remember all those years of suffering, especially that night, especially since the third Hokage made sure to seal away the memories, but you probably will soon, Kurama grimly stated. Living in the slums, taking your first life, and especially that night when those bastards were close to taking your life? That's the night where the villagers really learned to make sure to keep their hands off of you. But the damage was done, and it'll probably be redone soon. Naruto's body began to fade away as he was being brought to consciousness. Time to get up, boy. Time for you to prove your worth as a warrior, as a child of the Uzumakis, as a descendant of Mandalore. Naruto gasped as he woke back up. Scrambling to his knees, while being careful to not bump his head again, he glanced back at the cage where the other guy was in. Zeb? The cage was empty. Zeb? Where are Yoisuke? Naruto didn't get to finish his sentence as a hand roughly grabbed his collar. Choking, Naruto struggled to breathe, barely acknowledging the fact that he was being dragged away to Kami knows where. Just as Naruto thought that he was going to black out again, he was roughly thrown forward, and the air as stale and dirty as it was, mercifully returned to his lungs. Clinch. Click. Naruto blinked, and he realized that one of those hairy bastards put on what he assumed to be the future version, or should he say modern version now, of handcuffs. Don't worry about your hair, friend, slave. Gnar walked up with him with a chuckle, his hands behind his back in an authoritative manner. You'll be joining him in the mines soon enough. Just like him, you'll soon learn your place. Naruto shot him a glare, which matched Gnare's fierce one. Not caring once again about the collar around his neck, Naruto leaned his head back. PTO! Gnar blinked, and he realized that the human boy had just spit on his shoes. Letting out a roar of rage, he kicked Naruto's face, before stomping on it. Much to his frustration, the boy refused to scream or cry out, which only served to further anger him. You whiskered freak! I will make sure to make your life a living nightmare. Perhaps your family would like to join you. Wouldn't talk back as much, would you? Hearing this, Naruto simply let out a small chuckle. Heh, my family's dead, asshole. Why don't you just kill me so that I can join them? Gnare's sharp teeth gritted together as his fingers twitched at the blaster at his side. Kessel was a planet in the edges of the galaxy. All but ignored by the Republic, the criminals of the underworld took advantage of their willful negligence, and used slave labor to harvest spice and other resources from the planet. Perhaps at one point it was a beautiful planet, but whatever beauty it may once held was forever tainted by the cruelty of people, with the planet itself suffering from the dark vices of the sentients. Dirty smoke often filled the skies, with the air being barely breathable enough for both the slavers and the slaves. Speaking of, the new slaves were being transported to the planet, with the slaves being shamefully pushed and prodded towards their new masters and their new workplace. Overlooking this process was the Pike Syndicates, who watched the newcomers carefully. Despite the Zygerian Empire constantly doing business with them, it was the Pikes that truly dominated this planet. Yeorg! Everyone, both the slaves and their slavers, froze as they heard the loud scream. Turning their heads simultaneously, they watched a young blonde, human boy fly out of a freighter, being thrown by an angered Gnar. Gnar let out a loud growl as he walked up towards the fallen new slave, who was coughing and wheezing, trying to get back on his feet. Not giving him the chance to do so, he proceeded to kick him in the ribs again, making an example out of him in front of the other slaves. After 5 more minutes of continuous beating, Gnar finally stopped, now out of breath, but still looking just as angry as ever, watching Naruto cough out blood. Although admittedly impressed by the boy's endurance, he knew that if he went any further, he would kill the boy, which would have been counterproductive. Leaving the boy to the pike syndicates, he walked over to the other pikes to have a discussion with them. "Get him up!" One of the pike sentinels ordered the slaves, and the brave volunteers eventually walked forward to do so. "Hey kid, you alright?" "Huh!" Naruto's eyes finally fluttered open, his vision blurry and red. "Who said that?" "Me, you numbskull." Naruto looked to his right, and saw it was the Lazat Zeb. "You must have really pissed off the bastard to make him really give it to you." "I just spat on the guy's shoes, nothing else." Naruto weakly chuckled, grinning him a bloody grin. He winced, feeling his split lips scream in agony. "So what, are you saying I shouldn't have done it?" Zeb gave him a weak, sad smile. "Probably not, although I gotta give it you to ya. You got a bigger set than I do, and I'm a Lazat. Well, I never like giving respect to those that don't deserve it." Naruto gingerly shrugged his shoulders. "Besides, I think I've been through much worse, believe it." Despite his weakened and beaten form, Naruto's attitude remained as strong as ever, which somehow made Zeb feel a lot better. "Slaves!" All chatter ceased immediately as all eyes were on Naruto realized that he finally made it to the other slaves, who immediately looked away from him. Naruto slowly lifted his head, looking at who was standing on a podium with the other pikes. "I'm only saying this once, so you better listen up. You will all be living here as my personal labor force. As part of my collection, you'll be working on this section of the mine, which my empire happens to own. You will all be digging for my spices. Work hard and listen to your superiors, and I may go easy on you. May." This got many frowns from the slaves, but none dared to speak up, choosing to look down at the ground instead of meeting the Zygerian's eyes. The minute they did so, they noticed that the mine Nar was talking about was much different than the others. This one was a large, deep hole, looking much like the sinkhole cities of Utapau. "Welcome to Olam, also known as the Red Grave. This will be your home from now on, so better get used to it." Nara's laughter echoed throughout the deep mines, sending shivers down the spines of the other slaves. It has been 3 weeks since the sudden attack occurred on Konoha. Only a few casualties were reported, with many more being lightly injured. The real damage was mostly done to the village itself, with many buildings and trees either burnt down or blown up. Officially, it was reported to the world as a random attack by a group of thugs from outer space. One, which they successfully fended off with no major loss. However, a certain group of people knew better. Those group of individuals knew the truth, and were coming together to hold a meeting about it. As implied by the name, Emigekyo was a village that was always raining. On the days when the rain would come pouring extra hard, it was quite useful for shinobi, since the rain would help mask their presence. In this case, it would help the 2 individuals, who were wearing dark cloaks with red clouds on them, intrude the village. They were currently walking through an alleyway, doing their best to avoid detection. The 2 cloaked men peeked at a homeless man to their left from under their straw hats, who was currently trying to stay warm and dry under a makeshift tent. Trying to keep the fire alive in a small pot, the dirty, homeless man looked up at them. Seeing the cloaked men, he nodded at them, his false look of misery and fear turning into one of determination and duty. The 2 men nodded back, before they continued down the alleyway. They made a few turns, and found the entrance to a large sewer tunnel. Checking to see if they were being followed, they entered the entrance to their secret, underground base. "Man, it's been such a crazy few months, wouldn't you agree, Sasori?" Deidara finally said. The cloaked hunchback, who was now revealed as Sasori of the Red Sand, a missing nin from Sunagakure, just nodded. "I do wonder why our boss decided to summon us all together in person. I mean, we got these rings for a reason, you know?" Sasori just rolled his eyes. "I'm sure the leader has a good reason for such an order, Deidara. One attempt to take over a village because they're fools." Sasori was referring to the fact that Pain, their mysterious, orange-haired leader, had decided to overthrow Hanzo to take over the village. He had rallied most of the people with him, which was the first step to his plan for taking over as the village's leader. Due to the civil war they were undergoing, the village had closed itself off from the rest of the world, which, according to their sources, was now being called Elementia. Part of the reason to why the people had decided to rebel against Hanzo was because of the declining economy the village was suffering from. Hanzo, being the paranoid man he was, refused to open up to the other nations and villages. This, aside from the fact that it was always gloomy and wet, made the people more miserable and poor, and thus more hungry. On top of that, Hanzo refused to let the people in or out, which again contributed to the poor lifestyle the people had to undergo. The final straw would be the Galactic Republic's presence on their planet, offering food, superior technology, and other supplies to anyone who decided to join them. The people had hoped that their leader would accept their offer. Much to their displeasure, he flat out rejected their offer, and thus, sending the village into further despair. Then came along Pain, the strange-eyed man who seemed to have the powers of the gods. He seemed to swoop down from the heavens, offering them food, warmth, and hope of a better future. And just like that, almost half of the village joined him in the war against Hanzo, the paranoid tyrant. Thinking about how the Civil War got started reminds me of something. I think your old village joined the Republic, right? Deidara added. Meanwhile, the old geezer in my old village took the other way, joining the Confederacy or whatever. I guess it goes to show that petty rivalry extends beyond the stars, huh? That we can agree on. The two of them stopped in their tracks as they finally made it to the secret underground room. Regarding the two rebel guards, they pushed open the large doors and stepped inside. Looks like we've arrived, Deidara said, looking up at the large statue in front of them. Despite seeing it before in a different location, it never failed to amaze him. That statue was the Ghetto Mazo, or also known as the demonic statue of the Outer Path. It stood taller like any other monumental or religious statue that could be seen across the shinobi lands. The statue was sticking its hands out of the earth, its hands spread out in a prayer, giving the demonic being a sense of ancient, godly power. Deidara shook his head, and shifted his focus to the other apparitions of the rest of the Akatsuki members, who were standing on the fingers of the large statue. You've made it, the green-eyed masked figure said. Despite how dimly lit the room was, he could still see the scratched-out Takigakure symbol on his forehead. Good. Now that you're here, it will only be a matter of time before the leader comes in. Kakuzu. Deidara called the member out with a smile. How are you doing, my man? Don't you have any accounting to do or something? Kakuzu was infamous for two things, his freaky immortality, and his greed for money. Deidara always liked to poke at his lust for money, which was always fun to do. Don't talk to me about counting money, Deidara. Ever since the Republic rolled in, they're now using a different form of currency, which is annoying to learn, and equally annoying to convert to. Kazuka growled at him. Besides, I haven't been able to make any money at all. Not since we had to stay low for the past few months to take part in this civil war. And what doesn't help my mood is my idiot, zealous freak of a partner and his stupid, religious rants. EY, fuck you! Haydn shouted at his partner. You can speak easily, I have convictions. How can I honor Jashin if I cannot spill blood? You have it easy, man. I have convictions. Faith. How can I honor my god Jashin if I can't spill any blood? Like I care about your stupid convictions, Haydn. How dare you dash? Can you both just shut up? Sasori sighed, being the mediator for once. Nobody has been doing anything then except for gathering information now. I think we can all agree that we're all unable to do our favorite activities, so enough with the pointless banter. Sasori's right, you know. Deidara agreed with a chuckle. Besides, it's not like it hasn't been a complete bore these past few months. I mean, who knew that politics can be so interesting, especially these days? Just before someone else can say anything else, two more holographic images appeared on the statue's fingers. These two were quickly recognized, with the large sword and a particular set of red eyes making it easy to deduce their identities. Well, look what the cat brought in, Deidara said, upon recognizing the two other members. Itachi Kisame. It's been a while since we heard from you guys. Hey yourself, Deidara? Sasori. Guys. Kisame smirked under his robe. I've been missing these kind of conversations. That's a lie, and you know it, Kakuzu said to the rogue Miss Shinobi. Got any word from the situation in Kirigakure? Yeah, but I'd rather disclose it when the leader is here. Kisame turned to his partner. On the other hand, Itachi and I found some interesting news about Konoha. Something about their Jinchuriki. Oh, that village, huh? Deidara chuckled. I heard it took a beating from some bounty hunters from outer space. Pretty embarrassing for them, huh? Deidara taunted at Itachi. Much to his slight disappointment, Itachi didn't even blink at his jab. Like what my partner said, I'll wait until our leader arrives before disclosing details. You won't have to wait long. The rough voice came from the ground, and Deidara and Sasori watched as a plant-like man began to sprout from the ground. The man, much like the rest of them, wore the same cloak as the rest of them, and like the rest of them, this member was different from the rest of them, with the difference lying in the fact that he was plant-like, much like how Kisame was part shark, and with the fact that the right half of him was pure black. Setsu. Sasori nodded at the plant man, who nodded back at him. They're here. Moments after he said that, Sasori and Deidara heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they found themselves staring directly into the strange, rippled eyes their leader held, as well as the blue-haired woman's amber ones. I've arrived, Pain said, announcing his entrance. I see everyone is present. Let us not waste any more time. If you have any important intel, speak now. Itachi? Kisame? Usually it was Itachi who gave the intel, but Kisame, who was bored out of his mind, decided to do the talking for once. I'm guessing that everyone knows of the attack that happened at the Hidden Leaf Village, right? Well, we just managed to figure out that it wasn't a random attack by criminals. No, they had a specific target in mind to capture. And captured one of them, they did. Who was the target? Konan asked in place of her friend and leader. Naruto Uzumaki, the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. This news came as an unpleasant shock to the group, particularly towards Pain, who narrowed his eyes at the two. Is this true, Itachi? Pain slowly asked. If so, any idea on who's responsible, and why? It's as you, he said, Pain-sama. Itachi nodded. According to our intel, Naruto Uzumaki was the target these criminals were after. Mercenaries, excuse me. For what purpose, even they did not know. The only notable fact is that they were of varying sentient species. They are quite infamous in the galaxy, and that they seemed more concerned about leaving with their target than confronting the shinobi. Well, that's just fucking great, Haiden shouted. You're telling me that this little bastard is now somewhere around this big, fucking galaxy? Shut up, Haiden, Kakuza snapped. Your complaining won't get us anywhere. Well, excuse me, Kakuza-. Silence! Pain snapped, which stopped the bickering. This is no time for this sort of nonsense. He then fell into silence as he began to process this new information. With the capture of one of the Jinchuriki, especially the one with the nine-tailed fox, their plans were ruined. It didn't matter how many they captured now. So long as one of them was out of the picture, they couldn't continue on with their plans. While this setback is regrettable, this changes nothing of our plan yet. Pain finally continued. We must search for the Jinchuriki in the stars. We'll scour every planet if we must. However, our access to the lands beyond the stars will not happen unless we claim Amigekyo for ourselves. Once we overthrow the paranoid tyrant, not only will we possess the political immunity for our arrests, but we will also be able to negotiate the foreign governments for space travel. This is where every single one of you will come in. With all due respect, Itachi began to ask, how can we be of any help? The majority of us are infamous missing nin. If anything, our very presence unnerves the rebel soldiers in this hideout. I can tell that their trust and faith in this organization is wavering. And that is why all of you will do your best to correct that. Pain simply replied. This will be your chance to become saviors instead of mindless killers. With your heroic acts to fight against the mighty tyrant, your name will be cleared enough where the future leader of the village will grant you immunity. I see. Itachi nodded. Then we shall do our best to support the troops and the people. Same here. Kisame grinned. Man, this is gonna so fun. This almost makes me forget about my village's news. What about your village, Kisame? Konan couldn't help but ask. Well, there's whispers of the civil war coming to a close in Kiri, Kisame announced to the group. The word on the street is that Meiterumiya's forces are finally making a breakthrough, penetrating the Mizuki's defenses thanks to both the Republic and the Separatists' forces. Wait a minute, both of them? Konan raised an eyebrow. I was under the impression that the two were on poor terms with each other. Unless… You guessed it. Kisame nodded, his grin never leaving. They're having a free trial on who can offer the best deal, which includes supplies, men, you name it. Oh, and get this, since the Republic couldn't actually help them with the fighting, due to the lack of troops, all they could do is send in some humanitarian support in between the fighting, which is basic stuff like food and medicine. The Separatists, meanwhile, sent those, what do you call them? Droids? Yeah, droids. They sent a lot of them to help with the war, and not to mention the same thing the Republic offered, but in bigger quantities. If the rumors are true, May's gonna join the Confederacy, which is funny, considering how the Separatists are being called the bad guys and the traitors by the Republic. Interesting. Pain nodded in thought. Thank you, Kisame. This intel may actually prove valuable to our cause, should we ever have to pick a side when we overthrow Hanzo. Happy to help. Kisame just shrugged, before he finally finished, allowing Deidara to jump in. So Kiri's about to join the Big C. Data chuckled. That's good to know, since my village also joined that side. According to Sasori, Kumo is on its way to join them as well, which means that so far, 3 of the 5 major villages have joined the Separatists. Pain turned to the puppeteer master. Sasori, what's the news coming from Suna? Suna has renegotiated their treaty with Konoha after their failed invasion. My spies have notified me that they are almost done completing their treaty with the Republic as well, and are now on their way to receiving the gifts and technology they had to offer. Furthermore, it would appear that their Jinchuriki has now taken over as the next Kazekage. So that's 3 major villages against 2. Conan rounded up before moving on to the next question. What about the smaller villages? My village has already announced it would join the Republic, Kakuzu said, gaining everyone's attention. The village leader stated that out of respect for the late 3rd Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, he will remain an ally to Konoha, and thus, an ally for the Republic. Ugh! Haiden hissed. My village doesn't exist anymore. Turned into a fucking hot spring resort. No shame dash. Shut up, Haiden! Kakuzu snapped at his whining, before turning back to the leader. What else on the villages, Kakuzu? Kusa has decided to remain neutral in this political clash. No surprise really, considering how their skills in diplomacy far outranks its neighbors, like IWA and Konoha. They did, however, offer to be the middle ground so that they can act as the mediator, should any potential conflicts arise in the future. This was actually good news for the group, since Amigekure shares a border with them in the north. Hashigakure has also decided to join the Republic, which, given their friendly relations with Konoha, is no surprise. Meanwhile, the other independent countries like Nami and Haru have quickly declared neutrality, but decided to continue their equal trade for both sides the same. And Oto? Pfef. Deidara rolled his eyes. Like you could call that a proper village. It's more like Orochimaru's side project. Ignoring his comments, Kakuzu answered Pain's question. Orochimaru hasn't answered either's calls, and it's most likely that he wants to keep it that way. For the other non-shinobi villages, I have no information about it. Good work, Kakuzu. We'll keep that in mind, Pain said before turning to the plant man. Zetsu, I want you to continue to gather information about the other countries. Keep an eye out on the main villages as well, and notify us of any significant events. Will do, leader. Pain's eyes turned back to the others. Our plans have changed, everyone. We will focus all our efforts on taking control over Amigekure. Our top priority now is to win the support of the people, and to eliminate all of Hanzo and his loyal subjects. I want every single person even remotely associated to the tyrant to be eliminated. Is that understood, Dot? Yes, Pain-sama. They all nodded, determined to not fail their godlike leader. Itachi. Pain called out for the Uchiha, which made the room grow quiet. You will work with Zetsu to find out who the kidnappers are. I want to know why he was kidnapped, and where he could be now. It will be done, Pain-sama. Itachi nodded. Good. Pain nodded in satisfaction. You're all dismissed. Make sure that every single one of you gets here soon. They all nodded before the projections disappeared, leaving behind the Akatsuki members who were present in the area. They were all left in silence, save for the howling winds and the loud thunder that rocked the skies. Konoha, Hokage building. Tsunade sat in silence as all of the members of the Jedi Council, save for Yoda, who had personally arrived to the planet, were being broadcasted in front of Tsunade's desk, giving their reports in a somber tone. A protocol droid stood by her, waiting to do its duty. Unfortunately, our efforts to track down the bounty hunters and the boy are being slowed down. We are being bombarded with diplomatic missions to try to convince the other systems to not defect to the Confederacy. On top of that, the bounty hunters have done a great job on covering their tracks, making it that much harder for us to find him. It was Plo-Koon, the strange, masked Jedi who delivered the unfortunate news. Judging by the way he was looking down and the tone of his voice, it was clear that he was ashamed of this lack of progress. "Is that all you can say?" Tsunade slowly said, her voice trembling as she struggled to contain her rage. Kiadimundi nodded grimly. "What makes matters worse, my lady, is that we are finding ourselves unable to find him through the Force. It must be the work of the Sith, using the dark side to mask his presence." "Bullshit!" Tsunade slammed her hand onto her desk, the wood cracking from her fury. "My men were able to extract some names from the dead mercenaries in the forest. What about the names of the bounty hunters we gave you? Cad Bane? Jango Fett? Aurra Singh? Zam Wessel? How are you people so incapable of finding criminals with high profiles like these?" "Ma'am." Master Windu quickly stepped in, trying to become the mediator to de-escalate the situation. "I know this looks bad, but we assure you that we are doing everything in our power to retrieve the boy." "Right." Tsunade clenched her teeth, her desk groaning and cracking from under her fingers, which was noticed by Yoda. "I can tell, by the way that you're sitting in your comfortable chairs." "Ma'am dash. No! Enough of this! Enough meditating and using the Force to look for my godson. You all need to get up and search every goddamn planet if you have to. Kami damn the fact that I can't fly your stupid ships yet, otherwise I would do this myself." The Hokage's outburst made them flinch. This type of reaction to them wasn't exactly new, and they understood her anger completely. They could only hope that they could do their best to keep her satisfied, since failures like these was part of the reason to why some planets reconsidered their place in the Republic, or even worse, deciding to join the Confederacy. The planet was already divided enough as it was, with the entire planet being cut into two political camps, similar to how Earth currently is. "Angry you are, we can understand." Yoda spoke to her with an apologetic tone. "Continue this conversation, we shall do later." "Agreed," Windu said, nodding to his master. "We'll speak to you later, my lady." The transmission then shut off, just as the door opened, and in walked her longtime friend, Jiraiya. "Jiraiya, what now?" Tsunade sighed, and Jiraiya flinched at how much older she suddenly sounded. She slumped back into her seat, the metal chair creaking and groaning from the sudden shift of her weight. "I've got enough on my head now with all of this dash. Do you remember that offer the Republic and the feudal lords gave me?" Jiraiya interrupted, which made her look up at him. "I said no." "No?" Tsunade questioned. "Then who are they going to pick to be our senator? And what are you going to do instead?" "I'm going to leave Elementia to travel across the galaxy," Jiraiya stated, surprising both of them. "I'm taking all of my funds, and I'm going to search every Kami-forsaken planet for our godson. I'm going to establish my intelligence across the systems, and I'm going to make sure that I have eyes and ears everywhere. And as for your first question, well, our feudal lord picked Gara as the senator for the Republic's side of Elementia." "That kid?" Tsunade raised her eyebrow. "Awfully young, wouldn't you say?" Jiraiya shrugged. "Old enough to kill, old enough to be a senator. Besides, I rejected the offer, and you're too busy being the Hokage, and we don't really have that many strong allies to be the Republican senator of our planet." He paused to drink some water, before he continued. "By the way, in case you were wondering, Mei Terumi, the newest Kage for Kiri, just became the senator for the separatist part of Elementia, while Mifune became the neutral senator. Can't blame Mei if you asked me, since the Republic wasn't much help during the conflict. While the Republic sent minimal supplies, the Separatists sent an army of those droids to help with not just the war, but with reconstruction as well." Tsunade rolled her eyes back with a sigh, groaning as she slumped into her chair. All this politics, old and new, was wearing her down, and she really needed a break from all the bullshit that was going on. Yoda, seeing as how the woman needed to be left alone for a minute, turned towards Jiraiya. "Leave, when will you?" "I'm heading out tomorrow," Jiraiya said, his eyes hardened with determination. My godson's out there somewhere, and he's been all alone for too long. Thanks to the senators and even some of the Jedi, I learned about space travel and how to keep undercover. Are you sure you want to go alone? Tsunade asked her friend. I can give you a team to help you on your way. Thanks, Tsunade, but no, I can't risk getting too much attention. I'll need to keep a low profile, especially since we have no idea what the Akatsuki's up to. A wise move, that would be. Yoda nodded in agreement. Many steps ahead of them, we must be. Capture Hagamoro's children, they must not. A few months ago, the topic of the missing Nin group was brought up when Yoda showed Tsunade and Jiraiya in private his memory holocron. The minute they realized that Yoda actually had a good relationship with the Bijou, they decided that it was important to discuss the issues with the Akatsuki. They had no idea exactly why they wanted the Jinchuriki, with only theories and rumors to base their assumptions with, but the minute they realized the origin of the Bijou, it suddenly made sense to why they wanted to collect all 9 Jinchurikis. Their brief conversation was cut short by the knocking on the door. Come in. The door slowly swung open, revealing the elder nurse, who quickly recovered from the stun bolt. Lady Tsunade. The nurse bowed. Lady Shizen asked me to inform you that Kakashi Hatake and the other shinobi are waking up. Sighing from relief, Tsunade stood up, a small smile greeting the nurse. Thank you for the update. You may now return to your station. Yes, my lady. The nurse bowed again, before closing the door behind her. After that, Tsunade moved to grab her coat. It's time to speak with Kakashi, she says, being halfway done. Any information he has we'll need to know if we want to find Naruto. I'll head out soon then, Jiraiya said. He and Tsunade gave each other a quick hug, before they broke apart. He placed something onto her hand, and she realized that it was a small metal disc, his personal holopad. Be careful, Jiraiya. Please promise me that, Tsunade asked, her lips tightly pressed together, as she held back tears, afraid to show her fear of possibly losing another loved one. I promise, Tsunade. Jiraiya nodded, placing his hand on her shoulder. I'm not going to die until I bring our godson back home. It was a simple promise. A promise that both of them knew that he could fail at. They knew very well that he might search for the rest of his life, and he may never even hear about their godson. Still, it was enough for Tsunade to finally let go of her friend. Jiraiya gave her one last smile, before he bowed his head. Poof! A puff of smoke erupted from the spot where the white-haired man once stood. It cleared away within seconds, leaving nothing behind, but a hint of used chakra, which only Yoda was able to detect. Body flicker technique. Tsunade explained to Yoda. We use some of our chakra to move quickly from one place to another. I see. Yoda nodded, the technique reminding him of force speed. Noticing that Tsunade was walking away, no doubt that it was to attend to the recent patients, he decided to join her for the walk. Strange, Master Jiraiya is, Yoda commented. Tsunade turned to the small Jedi. What do you mean? Hatred and despair, often felt in distressed families. Sensed this in Master Jiraiya, I could not. Yoda explained, being slightly surprised by the Sanin's unusually calm emotions. Tsunade chuckled at this, her small laughter lacking in humor or life. Believe me, that's just his way of coping with loss. Tsunade sighed. Over the years, we lost a lot of loved ones. Friends, families, potential apprentices. All of them died from the wars this country has been through, with many of them not even making it to 20. Hell, Jiraiya rescued 3 orphans from the battlefield, and trained them to the best he could. Then one day, he finds out that they were all killed by the same enemy that we barely survived from. If I need to be honest with you, there's times when he drank a lot more than I did. Yoda's ears drooped as he heard Jiraiya's tragic tale. As shortened as it was, the feelings of loss and sorrow was not minimized, with Yoda not needing to use the Force to feel the pain coming from the story. It was then that Yoda wondered if the man's perverted actions was merely a way for him to cope with his loss. Strength of a Jedi, he clearly shows. But restraint, not as much. PFF, you don't have to be a monk to figure him out, Tsunade remarked with a chuckle walking past the Jedi. Come on, old man. Let's head to the infirmary. Konoha Hospital. Shizen was fumbling with a large, rectangular device in her hands. The protocol droid following her had explained to her about the functions of her new datapad. Despite how bulky it was, and despite how confusing as hell it was admittedly a huge step up from the usual large folders and papers. For one, it made gathering and storing data that much more faster and safer, especially since the data pad was highly water resistant, and clumsy drops would do nothing to damage the device. Hell, putting your foot through the gadget would only destroy the machine itself, but not the data, with the data being safely stored in multiple chips around the machine. Despite the comedic show that Shizen was putting on, those that were close to her would know that her bashful grin was hiding a far more tragic expression. The minute she was fully healed, she had heard the terrible news that had befallen the village. The minute she heard that Naruto Uzumaki, the blonde, goofy boy that she was beginning to see as a little brother, was kidnapped, she bursted into tears, feeling partially responsible for the entire mess. She was a proud kunoichi of Konoha, a strong woman who was taught by Tsunade Senju herself about the art of medicine, and yet she was ambushed so easily by the group of men and women, with the last thing she saw was the skinwalker taking her form and her clothes. When she woke up, her body felt weak, with her limbs bound together by some rope. It was honestly a miracle that she managed to get the door opened, with her needing to constantly slam her body and head to break the closet door down. It was also a miracle that someone had found her, which led to them going after the intruders. Bound, bruised, and nearly nude, knowing that she had finally alerted the village, she allowed herself to pass out, hoping with all her might that nothing would happen to the village, and that the intruders will be apprehended swiftly. Imagine her shame when she awoke to find out that not only a few shinobi had perished, but multiple buildings were demolished, with many more being on fire. To make matters worse, they had successfully kidnapped Naruto, with the strange, shape-shifting being using her form to make it happen. No, Shizen shook her head. I can't focus on my failure now. I need to help my patients. Stopping for a moment to put on an assuring smile, she opened the door. Shizen's face contorted as she took a minute to adjust to the sharp smell that stabbed into her brain. Ugh, I guess the cleaning droids were here recently, Shizen muttered. While she was no stranger to the smell of blood, death, and sterilized rooms and hallways, this new chemical the Republic introduced was far stronger than the ones they used to clean the hallways. She had to take a moment to remind herself that this chemical, despite how harsh it smelled, was safe to use, as evident by the fact that this sterilizing fluid was used by many laboratories across the galaxy. Shaking her head, she continued to walk down the clean hallway, which was bustling with visitors being desperate to visit their patients. This included one of the young genins, who was hurt in an explosion caused by one of the bounty hunters. Shizen decided to walk a little faster, afraid that the parents would come out of the room any minute and unleash their grief onto her. Shizen! The woman stiffened, before turning around to see her master arrive. Lady Tsunade, Master Yoda! Shizen bowed at them, grateful to see them again. Kakashi! Where is he? Tsunade said roughly. All right. Shizen cleared her throat. He was just discharged from his back-to-bath, my lady. I told him to take it easy for a while, but he insisted on talking with you. Important this must be, Yoda noted. Hurry, we should. Knowing Hataki, whatever he needs to say is important. Tsunade nodded. Let's not make him wait. Hataki's room. Kakashi Hataki was lying on his bed, his uncovered eyes staring blankly at the white ceiling. The birds chirped happily in the background, ignorant or uncaring of the chaos that had been plaguing the village for some time. Absent-mindedly, his hand slowly brushed over his stomach, where it was heavily damaged from the ship's cannon fire. The mercenaries, despite having no chakra, still proved to be a dangerous foes, as proven by their willingness to go all out to fulfill their mission. Kakashi was unfortunately enough to not get away from the ship fast enough, being the most reluctant to leave the area despite the rain of blaster bolts threatening to blast them to pieces. His stubbornness had costed him, with one of the cannon bolts exploding just meters from him. His eardrums had ruptured, and his stomach was burnt and shredded as he flew backwards like a ragdoll. According to the medical droids and the doctors, he was close to death's door, but it was thanks to Tsunade herself that he lived to fight another day. Still, he was forced to be submerged in the back-to-tank, which greatly accelerated his healing. If Kakashi was honest, though, a part of him wanted to die. He had failed to save his comrade, once again, and now Naruto, his student, and the son of the two people he looked up to, was gone, kidnapped by a group of thugs to Kami knows where. Kakashi's thoughts were interrupted when the door opened, with his visitors quietly entering his room. He relaxed as he realized it was Asuma, Kurenai, Guy, and the remaining members of Team 7, Sakura Harino, and surprisingly, Sasuke Uchiha. The said Uchiha was in handcuffs, his seal still restricting his chakra, with Anko Mitarashi keeping a close eye on him. Kakashi! He stared at his visitors for a moment so he could see them clearly, before staring back at the ceiling. He seemed dead to the world, wallowing in his failures, unable to see his friends and colleagues around him. Sakura ended up being the first one to approach her sensei's side, gently touching his hand to try to comfort him. Kakashi-sensei. Sakura. Her old teacher slowly nodded at her, before his head slowly moved towards the others. Asuma. Kurenai. Guy. Save your strength, Kakashi. Asuma held up his hand to stop him from getting up. You shouldn't even be talking right now. You need to be resting. What happened? Kakashi grunted, slowly rising like a zombie. He groaned as his bones and muscles screamed in protest, but he ignored them. What happened after I blacked out? We were dragged back by the rest of the ANBU, Kurenai said, her hand clutching at her arm. We were treated for our wounds, and whoever was well enough had to help out the civilians. All things considering, some of us got it easy. I mean, Yugao's still in her bed. Is she going to make it? She'll be fine, Asuma said after a minute-too-long hesitation. I mean, the cannon fire took out her leg, but fortunately, the medical droids were able to give her a prosthetic. She'll be fine after some rest and therapy. Damn it! Kakashi's singular eyes shut in sorrow, his heart broken after hearing about her devastating wounds. And the others? What about them? This time, it was Guy's turn to deliver the news. Most of them are fine, he said. Some didn't make it, but others will be fine after some time. Thankfully, it's mostly just severe blaster burns, but nothing that Tsunade's personal healers can't fix. Despite hearing about her team's loss, Kakashi finally allowed himself to relax a little, choosing this time to try to focus on the brighter side. Still, his fist clenched as he began to imagine Yugao's expression at hearing the loss of her team members, men and women alike that fought alongside her for almost over a decade. Anko closed her eyes, finding herself for once unable to watch someone in pain. It's no use, Kakashi. What's done is done. But still, those mercenaries who attacked our village are still at large. We took out some of them, Asuma quickly informed him. Inoichi was able to salvage some intel from the dead mercenaries, which include the names of the others. Kakashi's eye narrowed. Who are they? Don't even think about it, Kakashi, Anko warned him. You just avoided dying like 3 times this week, so don't think about getting revenge now. But Kakashi wouldn't listen, and struggled to get up. Damn it, just tell me their names. The door slid open. Kakashi-sensei, Sakura pleaded. Please think about Dash. You heard her, Hataki. Stay down. Everyone turned towards the door to see Lady Tsunade and Master Yoda enter the room, their presence causing them to fall into silence. She walked in and saw that he was halfway out of his bed. You better get back in your bed, Hataki. I won't say it again. Kakashi glared at her in slight defiance, before he sighed, allowing his body to slump back into bed. The small, green Jedi walked up to the middle of the room to face the bed. I've been told that you wanted to speak to me, Tsunade said to the patient. So speak. When can I get out? Tsunade narrowed her eyes at his question. I will say about a week. Why? To find Naruto, of course. Kakashi replied a little too calmly. I need to find him. Kakashi, you need to wait. Asuma tried to reason with him. We don't even know where to begin, since he could literally be anywhere in the galaxy dash. Kakashi's eye narrowed into a glare as he stared at the bearded shinobi, and suddenly, the room grew colder. Are you telling me to give up, Asuma? He growled. That's when Kurenai decided to jump into Asuma's defense. No, Kakashi. He's just saying that we can't just jump into this without a plan. Like he said, we have no idea where Naruto even is, and we need to gain intel first before we jump into action. And what? You expect me to do nothing but just lay here and sleep like nothing's happening? I need to be out there, looking for him, before Kami knows what they're going to do to him. That's when Guy decided to jump in as well, I know that you want to find Naruto, but like what everyone's saying, you need to rest. Your body is barely well enough for you to even run right now. And besides, the Uzumaki boy will be fine. You know how he dash. Your student Lee's fine now, isn't he? Kakashi shot back. He had most of his body crushed, but he's well enough to run laps. Don't change the subject, Kakashi. Guy held his ground. You're right, Kakashi muttered. We're only talking about the legacy of the dash. Kakashi, not here, Kurenai said, stopping him. Don't mention that in front of the genin. Meanwhile, while the older shinobi was bickering amongst themselves, Sasuke's face was growing more shadowed by his hair, his hands clenching as he continued to hear them mention the blonde's name. Enough already! Tsunade barked out. We have no reason to argue amongst ourselves about Naruto. Actions are already being taken. Then why are we kept out of it? Everyone stopped as they turned to face Sasuke. Anko narrowed her eyes as she placed her hands on his shoulders. Hey kid, keep your mouth shut or else dash. It's been 3 weeks already. The Uchiha ignored her words. Why is it that nobody has been doing anything by now? Damn the fact that we don't know where they are, we at least have the names of these intruders. Like you're one to talk, kid? Asuma glared at the kid. Couple months ago, you tried to turn to Orochimaru, which led to your fellow teammates to be critically injured by his goons. Although Asuma didn't like to show it, he held bitter feelings for the Uchiha, who was partially responsible for Choji having to go through intensive care. Never mind that for now. Sasuke glared back at him. I just want to know, what are you guys going to do about Naruto now? That's all I want to know. And why do you care, brat? Anko got in his face. For all I know, you just want to finish the job. Why would I kill someone who I consider my friend? This sudden outburst caught everyone off guard, who knew the Uchiha as the lone wolf ever since his clan's massacre. Yoda raised his eyebrow at this. Back at the valley, I was just about to cross the border without a second thought, Sasuke admitted. The only thing I cared about was gaining the power I needed to kill my brother. In that moment, I was sure that nothing else mattered. Unless we fought. Sasuke looked down as he clenched his hands, being brought back to that moment in the valley. We were evenly matched, with either of us winning or losing the fight. I told him that I was going to kill him to make my eyes stronger. But even then, he refused to back down, telling me that he would bring me back here, no matter what. The room was in complete silence as even Anko was unable to speak a word. Sasuke, for the first time in 2 months, began to speak about what had happened. Not wanting to resort to torture, since Sasuke appeared to just be in shock, and Noichi had tried to use his family's techniques to pry into his mind, but the cursed seal made him abort the process, due to the first thing he saw was Orochimaru's twisted form. For the past 2 months, they couldn't get him to utter a single word about what had happened, until now. He refused to give up on me, Sasuke continued. No matter how many times I hurt him, no matter how many times I knocked him down, he kept on getting up again. Even after I ran my Chidori through him again, he just kept getting back up. The Uchiha then fell into silence as his eyes grew hazy, falling back into that moment. His head began to slump downwards, until Kakashi cleared his throat. Sasuke, what did Naruto do or say to you that changed your mind? The raven-haired teen scoffed to himself. He reminded me that I had everything he doesn't. That I was lucky to have parents that loved me, and that there were others in this village that cared about me. Much to their surprise, he let out a sad chuckle. The loser always did know how to speak to people. This, once again, made the room fall into stunned silence as the usually stoic and now traitorous Uchiha was showing signs of guilt, making even the skeptical start to wonder if he truly had changed for the better. I was stupid, Sasuke admitted to the group. I was so focused on what I lost that I forgot about what I still had. Naruto literally had to beat that reminder into me before I realized it. Blinded you were. Everyone's attention was now pulled towards Yoda, who had spoken for the first time in those few minutes. Blinded by hatred you were. Common it is among victims. It is, Yoda said, joining the conversation. Losing family, painful it always is. Controlling your emotions, difficult it is. Not being able to fully process the thought of being spoken to by an alien for the first time, he could only say, "Yeah, I guess so." Sasuke frowned as he was brought back into his memories. Out of nowhere, he began to shudder. Disturbed you are. Yoda pointed out. Why, might I ask? There was something else that happened, Sasuke recalled. Right when we clashed for the last time, I think I felt Naruto's emotions. Felt his emotions, you say? Yoda raised an eyebrow. Yeah. At that moment I just felt everything Naruto felt. His anger, his sadness, his hatred, and everything else. Sasuke then looked at his right hand, which had healed up quite nicely. Still, it would twitch from time to time, a reminder of the damage done to it. But then there's more. In that moment when I felt his emotions, I think mine came out too. Just everything that I bottled up and everything that I've already been feeling just came out of me. And I think my Chidori got stronger in that moment. Already armed with the knowledge of the technique, Yoda stroked his chin, before he turned to the Hokage. Lady Tsunade, a blood sample of this entire village, may I have? This earned him an odd look from the blonde. What for, if I may ask? Test something I must do, Yoda answered, taking a quick glance at the Uchiha. More mysteries this planet has to offer. Yeah, sure. I can arrange that. This made them all stare at their leader, puzzled at why she would grant the stranger such a suspicious request. This keeps getting weirder and weirder, Sakura said, her words voicing the thoughts of the rest of them. Kamino. Boba chewed his lip as he put down his father's blasters. Grabbing a wet towel to wipe his hands, he examined the disassembled weapon, before nodding in dull satisfaction. Despite the job being well done, he still felt nervous, due to his father still being inside the Bacta tank. Entering the living room was Cad Bane, who was looking as miffed as ever, as he was just done talking to the owner of their temporary homes. Tall, pale pricks, the Duros grumbled, sitting across the young human. Trying to pick us for everything we have with their damn rent. Hey, Bane, Boba replied to him respectfully. Having problems with the Kaminoans? I don't trust them for a bit, Boba. The bounty hunter's eyes gazed around the room, searching for any visible cameras. I'm curious, child. How do you stay so calm in a place like this? By helping around usually, or cleaning my dad's weapons, Boba said, using a towel to clean his father's other blaster. There isn't much to do here on Kamino, honestly. You tell me, kid. The door then slid open, getting the two to turn towards it. In walked Aura, who was helping Django limp towards them. In contrast to Aura, Django was in his casual outfit. Dad? Boba quickly walked up to him as the Mandalorian was set onto the couch bed. Easy, Boba, he still needs rest. Aura warned him. Here, lay down. Thanks. Django grunted, before turning to his son. Boba. Yes, Dad? I'll be fine. Django smiled at him. Nothing some Bacta can't fix. Django realized that Boba's frown was still on his face, so he continued. Here, can you go get us something to eat? Sure. Django turned to Sing. Can you follow Boba? You can go get something for yourself as well. What, I'm your maid girl now? Aura smirked, before tapping on Boba's head. Come on, kiddo. Let's go give the big boys some privacy. The two quickly exited the room, leaving Django and Bane on their own. I'm curious, Django. Bane spat out the toothpick he was chewing on. When are you going to tell the others about your past? Especially your kid, Boba? Later. The human bounty hunter sighed. Grabbing the box of pills from the nightstand, he popped them into his mouth, swallowing them dry. For now, though, there's a few things I need to talk about. You're still thinking about that kid? Get over it. Bane snorted, leaving over on his chair. We've got our credits, and our employer was generous enough to understand the situation. So what's the issue? Django didn't answer, his eyes narrowing as he was lost in thought. Without warning, he hopped out of his bed, and walked towards the table to where Bane was sitting, where his helmet rested. Glancing at the T-visor, which seemed to be staring at him, he placed his hand over the silver helmet. His knuckles whitened as he began to grip onto it furiously. Bane. The Duros looked at him, his non-existent eyebrow now raised. I need you to do me a favor. Walking back to their new room, Aura and Boba ran across Sam, who was also getting some food. I'm still surprised, honestly, Sam said, opening the door for them. From being chased by those ninja-like warriors, to escaping a firefight between the slavers and the pirates, to being stuck on this planet for weeks. Not exactly what I thought would happen from taking that job. That's just the life of a bounty hunter. Aura chuckled. It's full of the unexpected. You'll get used to it. They're gone again, Boba nearly shouted, their conversation coming to a halt. They took a look around their room, and it was indeed empty. Huh, where'd they go? Zam's eyes scanned the room for the 2 male bounty hunters. Looking around, the room was indeed empty, save for them and Boba, who was walking up the table. He picked up something, which turned out to be a piece of paper. Aura took a look in the storage room, and saw that it was empty too. Django's gear is gone, and by the looks of it, his weapons too. Dear Boba, Django's son read. Sorry that Bane and I had to leave. I just needed to check on something. I promise that I'll be back soon. Aura and Zam will stay with you. From your dad. The 2 female bounty hunters expected him to be frustrated, but Boba just sighed, before grabbing a seat. Funny enough, Zam appeared to be more frustrated with their sudden disappearance than Boba was. Bastards. Aura just chuckled. Well, you know how they are. All work, no play. Now come on. We can have fun without them. Slave Eye. The Slave Eye was already leaving Kamino's orbit, with its pilot currently preparing for the jump to hyperspace. Sitting next to the said pilot was Bane, who, while annoyed at the sudden trip, was also curious to where this was going. You sure you're good enough to fly? The blue bounty hunter asked. I'd rather not go on this sudden field trip to who knows where, only to die because you can't dodge an asteroid in time. I'm fine, Django answered while punching in the coordinates. The painkillers are doing their jobs, so I can use my arms just fine. I'm not the one that likes asking a lot of questions, but are you sure it's a good idea to go back to that planet? There's a place described only in the ancient legends of our people that I had forgotten about, Django said. If that place does exist on that planet, then some of the answers I'm looking for should be there. If you say so. Cad Bane sighed. I know so, Bane. Django nodded to himself. I know so. He then punched in the last of the buttons, and the hyperdrive began to start up. I swear I'll make it up to you, Jariel. You and everyone else. The ship jumped into hyperspace, blasting them back to the planet Elementia. Kessel Olam. It was another summer day on Kessel. Not a cloud was in sight, with both the slaves and the slavers alike being roasted under the merciless sun. As usual, without the Republic breathing down the necks of the Pikes and the Zygerians, both criminal factions were free to operate their spy mining. Despite the heat, however, the slavers themselves weren't complaining very much. After all, they were inside of their luxurious offices/homes, with clean, filtered air filling their lungs, and with the slaves fanning them to keep them cool. The slaves, however, were not so fortunate. Twack! A large, curved, thin blade pierced a large boulder. The crack spread like wildfire, before it disintegrated, causing a cloud of red dust to cover the whole of the tunnel they were digging. Cough, 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 cough! A human man stumbled through the dust cloud. Under layers of dirt and red dust was fairly brown skin, with the man sprouting coarse, oily hair. His face was mostly covered with a small green and white cloth, which helped filter the dangerous clouds and fumes that filled the small tunnel. Ya Ibn el Sharmuta! The man cursed in Arabic. Could have warned me this boulder would just fall apart. He coughed a couple of times more while leaning his hand against the wall. Patting the guy's back was another human, whose skin, despite the dust and their miserable state, seemed to glow in comparison to the Arabian. Take it easy, Tariq, you'll drop dead if you keep this up. He pulled out his small canteen of water, one of the little luxuries those slavers allowed them to have. Tariq took a moment to move out of the tunnel, gasping for fresher air, before accepting the canteen. Thanks, Cedric. My pleasure. They heard light footsteps approaching them, and they relaxed, seeing how it was Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki, whose eyes were once full of life and hope, was now reduced to a squinted glare, his eyes now narrow and always on guard. The dulled, blue orbs glanced at the 2 men, and they softened for a moment, before he walked into their tunnel, holding a flashlight with fresh new batteries. They offered him some of their water, and after the teen took a moment to wipe his dusty hands on his tattered shirt, which he pilfered from a dead slave, he accepted the water. We close yet? He grunted. They shrugged, and then the boy glanced at the tunnel, before sighing with relief. Good. Found it. He muttered to himself, glad to know that those harsh days of backbreaking work had finally paid off. Guys, we found it! Tariq took his flashlight, and aimed it at the dark. A small smile was brought onto their faces as the beam of light revealed the mineshaft they were looking for. You sure this is the one? Tariq asked cautiously. Well, I don't see the lights being on, Naruto snarked. Still, I want to be sure, Tariq said, pulling out a glow stick and breaking it, before throwing it as far as he could. The rediscovered mineshaft was filled with green light as the stick flew through into the collapsed shaft. Pretty sure that's it, Naruto grinned. Finally, Adric groaned with relief, wiping the sweat off his forehead before he turned to leave with his friend. Naruto stared into the dimly lit darkness for a moment, before he turned around, picking up their forgotten pickaxe to join them. If they were lucky, maybe today's food would have less mold and dust on it than usual. Mess hall. The mess hall was a large, yet cramped area for where the slaves go to eat. This one in particular was one of the 3 that existed in the mines, with the 4th one being destroyed long ago by a mining accident. The tables, which were rusty and ancient, sat tightly packed together in an effort to conserve some space. They were currently filled with people of all races and species, which included Naruto and his 2 friends who just sat down to eat their food, or what they can afford to call it in their situation. Adric poked at the sludge in his tray with his spoon, frowning when he found something hard. Scooping it up, it looked to be a claw of an animal. What the hell is this? I think it's a part of a bird, a random Radian slave answered helpfully. Just try to imagine it's something else. Shaking his head, Adric grabbed it with his hands and nibbled on the fleshy parts of it. Meanwhile, on the other side of the table, Tariq was making a small prayer, his hands left open as he was reciting verses of the scripture from his religious text. Tariq was a religious Urzik Muslim, who would often recite quotes from his holy book, or would just pray in his prison cell while the others slept. Amin. Tariq concluded his prayer, before closing the book, putting it away. He finally grabbed his fork to eat, when he took a look at his blonde friend. Hey Naruto, you alright? Naruto was blankly staring at his tray with an empty gaze, slowly eating his meal while taking slow, careful sips of his water. He seemed deaf to the world, not having said even a single word to any of them ever since they started eating. Naruto. Adric snapped his fingers twice in front of the blonde. The Imam asked you something? How many times do I have to tell you to stop calling me that? Tariq said to the Russian. I just read the Quran often when I'm free. Yo, Tariq. A random man walked past Naruto, tapping Tariq on the back. The 3rd drill's out of commission again. It overheated itself, and now the cooler's busted. Mind repairing it? Tariq, who was assigned as one of the drill operators of the lower levels, also happened to be a good mechanic, who was tasked to help with mechanical repairs. This earned him plenty of respect from both the slaves and the slavers, since they got to save money and equipment. Sure. I'll have to ask permission first. Our crew is busy working on that mineshaft that broke down a few weeks ago. The supervisor already gave you permission. Add to note, he also wants you to cut your brakes to avoid any more problems with those zigs. The man then left, leaving a frustrated Tariq behind. Fuck me. Tariq pinched his nose and let out a groan. Fucking taking away my fucking break? I swear that the damn supervisor's testing me. Don't worry about it. They'll give you shit no matter what happens, so just finish your food and then get back to work. Adric shrugged, before going back to his meal. Hey! Naruto looked up from his meal, and internally groaned as he saw a familiar pair of slender legs. His eyes being wise enough to not linger in that area, he looked up to see the familiar dull color of Beskar armor. Slam! They flinched as she slammed her tray in the middle of the 2, gaining them a lot of attention. Naruto tried to look up at the girl, only to feel something being dumped onto his head. He licked at the wet sludge that ran down his face, and realized that it was his food. This got some whistles and gasps from the other slaves, whose attention was now turned towards the 2's confrontation, which, while not news, was certainly the drama that everyone was interested in. Naruto just sighed, being quite used to her behavior at this point, and just looked up at her. Sabine. The black-haired girl just glared at him, before grabbing his cup, pouring its contents all over his head to finish the job, completely soaking his already dirted shirt, alongside his hair and face. She then threw the cup onto his lap, before grabbing her tray, stomping away. Hey! What's your problem? Adric stood up, yelling at her as she continued to walk away. I'm speaking to you. Leave it, Adric. Naruto said to the Russian, waving it off while removing his shirt to try to dry it. Just ignore her, I'm already used to it. Tariq shook his head. I don't get it. What have you done to piss her off? Rolling his eyes, Naruto answered. Apparently when I told her my last name, it got her pretty angry. She slapped me, called me a poser, then walked away. What? Just Uzumaki? Your family got beef with hers or something? That I don't know, Naruto said, shaking his head. I don't even know who my parents were. I have been an orphan since the day I was born. Naruto's face tightened into a scowl as he twisted his shirt one final time, wringing out any remaining water in it. Sorry to hear that, my friend. Tariq bowed his head in sympathy. Knowing full well the horrors and struggles of a soldier, he had his fair share of meeting those without parents, whose lives were lost on the battlefield, be it a fellow warrior or an innocent bystander. Well, life is a journey of hardship, my friends, Adrik said to them. From that you'll become stronger, and I can assure you that with that patience of yours, you'll become what's worth of you. Thanks, Adrik. Naruto shook his hand. I appreciate that. I gotta go now, Tariq said, pushing his tray in front of Naruto. Here, take mine, you'll need it. Hey man, I dash. Just take it, brother. A life worth living is a life with giving, Tariq said with a smile, patting the blonde's shoulder. I'll be fine, you just make sure to have something in your stomach. I'll see you later. Leaving the table for his next assignment, Naruto and Adrik were left by themselves to try and finish eating their food. It would be 10 more minutes before they would be close to finishing their meal. Ain't wasting this for sure, Naruto stated, pouring the remaining water into his own flask. Smart kid. Recognizing that voice, Naruto turned around to see Zeb standing there. Zeb. Naruto stood up, slapping hands with the Lazet. You just finished your shift? Sure did, kid, the Lazet said. He frowned when he finally noticed the mess on Naruto. What happened? Sabine Wren. He shrugged, nodding to where she was sitting with the other female slaves. Her again? Zeb asked, shaking his head. You know, that brat's got a problem with you, but I just don't know why. Try yelling. A loud, ear-piercing alarm rang, signaling the end of Naruto's break. Well, gotta get back to work. See you later, Zeb, Naruto said, patting the Lazet on his back before picking up his tray and walking towards the exit. See ya, kid, Zeb said as he walked over to the others to take his break. Walking outside of the mess hall, Naruto entered an outdoor corridor, which bordered the edges of the mine. Sticking his head out, he looked up to see the top of the sinkhole, watching the transport ships coming in and out, no doubt dropping off and collecting slaves and spice for their twisted business. Naruto clenched his hands as he thought about the many slaves that perished daily. He flinched as he watched countless bodies fall down into the bottom of the sinkhole. Those were the slaves that died from dehydration, malnutrition, or from various accidents, but their slavers weren't very concerned, since there was a lot more from where they came from. He shook his head. He couldn't think about them now. For now, the only thing the Leaf Shinobi could do was to try to survive. Coruscant Jedi Temple. Master Plo-kun, Shak Ti, and Mace Windu sat in the council chamber, talking to the holographic image of Grand Master Yoda. He had just contacted them, telling them about his sudden decision to test some of the Elementian children's blood for midichlorians. Master Yoda, are you sure that the results of those two are correct? Master Plo-kun pleaded for clarification. Incorrect, the test never is, Master Yoda replied. Hyuga Hinata, Uchiha Sasuke, force sensitive, they both are. High midichlorian count, they both possess. But this can't be. Shak Ti was flabbergasted at the results, staring at it again. Their midichlorian count rivals yours, Master Yoda. This can't be a coincidence. Master Windu, who was silent up until now, decided to finally speak his thoughts. What would you suggest, Master Yoda? Bring them to the temple, we must, Yoda said without hesitating. Train them in the way of the Force, we will. Too dangerous to leave them alone, it is. What about the council? Plo-kun brought up. These two children are even older than Anakin was when we took him in. Surely the rest of us will reject them. Special training, receive they will. Necessary it will be, Yoda answered, looking at the Togruta Jedi. Master Shak Ti, teach the Hyuga girl you will. Shy she is, but strong and determined she also is. Master Shakti bowed to the Grand Master. I will be pleased to do so, Master. Who will teach the boy then? PLO-kun asked. Finding the right master for this boy will be crucial if we are to stop his darkness from spreading. Yoda and Windu took one look at each other, and instantly knew who would be the best one suited for this task. This did not go unnoticed by PLO-kun, as he asked, Who do you have in mind, Master? Who do you have in mind, Master? Someone who we both know, Master PLO. Mace Windu said solemnly. Olim. The sun was growing lower for the Spice Planet, which meant the end of another day of mining for the slaves. They were being escorted back to their cells, which many were more than happy to hurry back. Not only were they done with the work and the abuse, but the metal beds were limited, which meant that the unlucky ones had to sleep under the beds or on the floors, which wasn't very comfortable, even though the beds themselves weren't that much better. TCHK. A small ball of light was ignited as one of the slaves lit their lighter. Pulling out a cigarette, which was smuggled inside by one of the newest slaves, he lit the tip, before beginning to smoke it. The said smoker was a young man with the same skin tone as Tariq, but hailed from a different country. Slowly sucking in the cigarette before slowly breathing it out through his mouth, he continued his story. So like I was saying, I used to work in the oil refinery with my father in Roslanef as a transporter, but when the Civil War came along, we all got caught in the crossfire. Most fled the town, mostly towards Egypt or, if lucky, Tunisia. Many died in the firefights and the bombardments, and the others went missing, like my father and 3 of my uncles. He paused for a moment to take another smoke, before he continued. After the war ended, I went back into my town to try to find some work. Couldn't find any since the refinery was blown to hell, so I hooked up with some oil smugglers, who did business from Egypt to Algeria to even Sudan. The current speaker was Ibrahim Raida, a new slave that was native to Libya. He was forced to work as a driver for the spice transport wagons, which collected all of the harvest spice, before being brought up to the load-up point. Despite the situation, however, he was crafty enough to smuggle a few things inside of the mines, which instantly gained some respect and some favors from his fellow slaves. Handing over the cigarette to Adric, he began to wrap up his story. I was doing this from 2012 to like 2014. Made a good fortune of bringing oil to the black market. How'd you manage to cross those borders? I thought they closed them down when the war began. Tariq asked his fellow Arab while sitting on the bunk bed with Adric, who would hand him the smoke once he was done with it. Oh that? PSH, that was easy. Just wait till it's dark, then the guards will be easier to avoid. Besides, even if they catch you, just throw them a small bribe, and they'll usually look the other way, since they're not very interested in stopping fuel tanks if they get something out of it. Ibrahim shrugged. The fact that they usually got their own kids to feed helps, so I make sure to give them 1,000 dirham each. Shit, sometimes if I was generous enough, I'd make it 2. Tariq just shook his head, before blowing out his smoke. He then passed it down to his other cellmates, who, at first glance, sort of looked like them in terms of skin color, but was actually Mexican, who, alongside Ibrahim, was brought in just last week. An experienced miner, he went by Jimmy Regatas. Speaking of Jimmy, it was him who asked the next question. Okay, so how'd you end up here, amigo? Ibrahim frowned when he was brought back to that unpleasant memory. The smuggling crew of mine got greedy, and eventually turned to slave trade. He closed his eyes as he shook his head. I declined, of course, and stuck to just smuggling oil for a few more years until those Salafist bastards took over Roslanef, and I was left with nothing as I fled from home again. I didn't want to run for too long though, so I ended up joining a local militia that was with the government. We soon went back to Raz and kicked those bastards out of my town. Damage was done though, since my whole neighborhood was pretty much abandoned, with only a few left, who managed to hide from those assholes. Roslanef was a ghost town for a good few months. Ibrahim paused as he was brought back to that moment. Slaughtering those bastards was satisfying, but it was a bitter victory once the last bullet had been fired. The town, which was once full of life with the sound and presence of street vendors, kids, and numerous small shops, The silence was honestly a lot more unsettling than the sound of gunfire if you asked him. After that, the militia I was with turned to Surti, where we heard about a slave auction that was about to go off. Turned out it was a trap, and we were ambushed. And what do you know, part of them included my old smuggling crew. They thought that it was a good way to pay me back by selling me off into the auction, and you can guess the rest. Ibrahim ended with a glare, staring into his lighter, which he flicked on and off in random. Should have killed them before when I had the chance. Should have killed them there when I had the chance. The other men fell into silence to give respect to the man. Eventually, it was Jimmy's turn to share his story. I come from Mines Villa, which was a mining town just south of Canania. I worked in the illegal mines with the other villages up in the mountains. Wasn't anything else to do but to try and make money, and it was either the mines, or go try to find work somewhere else. Anyways, I worked in the mines since I was 11, so I got pretty much used to the dust in my lungs. Jesus, man. I get that, but really I got good at it. Jimmy smirked. I know how to set up a basic mine shaft. Lights, ventilation, air conditioning, transport, you name it. Then I turned 18, and the government came in and shut down all the mines, leaving everyone who worked in the mines without any sort of income, and the town quickly became deserted. Wow, that sucks. Yeah, pretty much, Jimmy said, taking another drag. So me and my familia moved to Nuevo Laredo, where my abuelo lived, who was working as a cop back then. He tapped his finger on the smoke, and watched the ashes fall onto his lap, before taking another puff. Mi familia, my people, and the rest of the community are hard-working people. Good men, too. The only thing they feared was God Almighty Himself and nothing else, Jimmy said, crossing his heart. He then glanced at Tariq, who just shrugged in return. A bit relieved at the absence of religious conflict, he continued. Mi abuelo and mi tío were cops, working hard for the family and to keep the streets clean. But then out of nowhere, my grandfather and my father got sacked by the police commissioner. No explanation, no warning, just told them to leave, before taking their badge and their gun. Jimmy's face grew darker as his fingers squeezed the cigarette. It didn't make sense to me until that Friday night. A couple of cruisers just rolled up in front of my house, and with no warning, just shot the whole house up with everyone in it. Jimmy's fingers curled around the dying cigarette, crushing it with his hands. It burned his skin, but the man didn't seem to care. Nobody in that house survived that day. I was the one lucky one, or I guess unlucky, if you can say so. I was arriving home on my bike when I saw it all happen. Right in front of me, my mama, papa, my uncle, my 3 sisters and brothers were just killed like animals in front of me. Murdered by the people that we thought were friends. They were corrupt, weren't they? Naruto, who was the quietest of the group so far, finally spoke up from his bed, staring at the darkening ceiling. See? Jimmy nodded grimly. The commissioner, the lieutenants, even the fucking highway patrols, they were all paid by Los Zetas to kill my family just to tell everybody that they ruled Nuevo Laredo. They were former cops, turned rogue after they got training from those pinched gringos across the border. Fucking Americans created a big mess like how they did in Libya, Ibrahim? The Libyan just nodded. Yeah, typical. Anyways, Jimmy sighed, dropping the remains of the cigarette. My family was killed because my stubborn old grandpa refused to stay quiet about the corruption that was poisoning our city. The final straw was when he found out the mayor was meeting with drug traffickers. He tried to tell everyone, but those bastards got to mi familia first. Jimmy shook his head, rubbing his eyes as he buried his face into his hands. You alright, Jimmy? Sorry, but when I keep thinking about it. His fist hardened into a fist, his knuckles widening from rage. I just feel like going on a rampage, matando a cada bastardo que mato a mis seres queridos. If you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to. Adric cut in. I know. Jimmy sighed, reaching for something under his shirt, which turned out to be a silver cross necklace with Jesus on it. I just feel like I've been weak on my response to all of this, he said, clutching onto his cross. I'm not comfortable with talking anymore. Adric nodded. I understand, my friend. Life can be cruel. They then fell into a tense-filled silence, hearing nothing but the snores and the whimpers of the other slaves. You know what? Naruto suddenly said. When I hear all your stories, a part of me feels jealous. What do you mean? Ibrahim wondered. I've never had parents since the day I was born, Naruto said solemnly. They died when I was born to protect the village I lived in. I never had a mom to pick me up from school and to prepare me dinner. I never had a dad to teach me anything, or to just hang out with. Naruto's frown turned into a glare as he began to recall all the bad memories he had with his village. I'm not kidding when I say that from the day I was born, it just seemed like everyone and everything hated me. Everybody hated me for something I wasn't, blaming me for the attack on my village, and for getting the previous leader killed. It never made sense, and to this day, it still kind of doesn't. If it wasn't for the leader of my village, I think I would have gone mad years ago. Naruto's blue eyes then softened when he thought about the people in his life that made him smile. There were only a handful of people in my life that helped me stay positive. Funny enough, one of them was technically an enemy. I was on a mission with my team to protect a bridge builder from a group of assassins. One of them was Haku, who I met after falling asleep outside. I didn't know that he was my enemy at the time, and looking back, he could have killed me on the spot. Instead, we had a nice chat together, and he even taught me that the greatest source of strength comes from protecting those you love. That's pretty deep, amigo. Jimmy nodded. What happened to him? The sudden silence that ensued said it all, and he winced at that. Oh, yeah. I guess that's just life. Ting! Everyone turned to the cell door to see a pike guard slamming his stick against the door. Lights off, up to bed, the pike guard said, walking past their door. The moment the guard left, the lights above the 5 young men turned off, leaving the only light in the darkness to be the red burning cigarette. All right. Ibrahim took another stroke before exhaling. Let's sleep, bastards. He dropped the smoke and put it out before everyone started moving to their bunk beds, trying to get as much sleep that they could for the next day. Laying on the down bed underneath Naruto was Jimmy, who decided not to sleep underneath Ibrahim's smelly ass from the food he's been eating in the kitchen with his connection, hoping that Naruto would be less of a nuisance. Sleep well, amigo, he said to Naruto, crossing his arms while closing his eyes, leaving Naruto to keep staring at the ceiling without an inch of sleep in him. Instead, he reached down to his jacket he managed to scavenge from another deceased slave and pulled out from under it his pendant. He stared at it, knowing he was lucky that the slavers didn't confiscate it, as he hid it for as long as he could, being it the only reminder of his home. Gripping it into his hands, he made a promise to himself in his mind, one of the things the old man third Hokage told him. I will not give up, I will not. Elemenshi Yuzushiogakure. Yuzushiogakure. It was once an island full of life. An island full of civilians and shinobi, who kept to themselves as they practiced the art of sealing. They were the Uzumaki clan, an infamous clan of powerful warriors, with skills in sealing that was unrivaled. But that was in the past. The once glorious village was now in ruins, destroyed by enemies who never took credit for their successful annihilation of the clan, leaving nothing behind but still running whirlpools, corpses, and broken, empty buildings. Crackle! Crumble! Django and Cad Bane were currently walking through the ruins, having flown to this island from all the way from Kamino on the Slave Eye. Cad Bane was brought along on this field trip, and while the ruins did serve to somewhat fascinate him, especially after hearing all the legends from the Mandalorian walking next to him, he was still irritated from the flight. Unbelievable! The helmed warrior breathed as he made sure to take in the sights before him. No Mandalorian had ever set foot upon this place again, seeing as how they never needed to, and because they never received the call to. Plus, there was the constant wars that was fought that included their participation, many of them ending up to be civil wars. On top of that, his people before him were forced to swear to never return to this cursed planet unless their brethren summoned them. However, after so many years of silence, it was clear now why they never even got a call back to make sure that they were okay. Hey, Fett! Cad Bane grunted, flicking away his toothpick. You mind telling me the purpose of this depressing field trip? This place gives me the spooks. He had just walked past the corpse, which still had its forehead protector and armor on. It looked to be in many different pieces, indicating that this poor fellow was blown to bits. I told you, I'm here to look for something, Django answered, his heart feeling heavy from seeing the abandoned corpse of the Uzumaki. Some possible artifacts that they left behind that I can possibly use, as well as that boy, when we save him. If we save him, the Duros grunted. What destroyed this place, by the way? No one knows, Django admitted. All we know is that this island was set ablaze, destroying nearly everything here. He kept his visor running, scanning to try to find anything. Great. The Duros sighed, looking around the ruins again nervously. He nearly jumped when he realized that the Mandalorian had stopped walking. Looking in front of him, he realized that they were standing in front of a wall, with ancient writings and carvings on them. Bane realized that Django was touching the spiral, which had a hole in the eye. I wonder. Django dug around in his pocket and pulled out a clear crystal. Before Bane could ask, Django stuck the crystal into the hole, and they both discovered that it was a perfect fit. A key? Just then, the wall began to glow bright blue as the carvings and the text began to emit the same light. It started from the center of the whirlpool, before quickly spreading to the rest of the wall. Django yelped as the blue light and text suddenly crawled onto his arm. Letting go of the crystal, he staggered backward as he tried to swat the glowing text off of him, but just as quickly as it latched onto him, it suddenly disappeared. Before either of them could start any questions, Bane pointed back to the wall. I think you opened a door, Django, he noted. Looking back at the wall, it would seem like he did indeed open some sort of gateway. As the glowing spiral drawing began to suddenly unravel itself, the hole in the middle growing bigger, until it grew big enough for a man to walk through. The minute the whirlpool stopped expanding, the giant hole stopped glowing, allowing them to look back at it with ease. Even with Django's visor, he found the light to be quite blinding. Well, here goes, Django muttered, before he took a brave step forward. Stepping towards the hole, he hesitantly stuck his hand forward, and found that it went through the hole. Astonished, he quickly pulled it back, and found that his hand was back in the light, and not submerged in the dark hole. Saying nothing else, the Mandalorian took a deep breath, before he stepped inside the portal. The darkness seemed to swallow him whole as he completely passed through the opening. Shrugging, Cad Bane quickly followed suit. The minute he completely entered the hole, the whirlpool portal closed shut behind them. The roar of a ship's engine screeched across the land as it flew through the air. Flying over the landscapes of the mining planet towards its destination, the sheathipede transport shuttle only began to slow down once it flew over the mining hole that was named Olam. Its landing gears opening up like a large, metal insect, it slowly hovered down onto one of the few landing pads the mining hole had, with 2 members of the Pike Syndicate, and Darth Nar himself awaiting the ship. Once the shuttle settled down, its doors slid open, and out walked the Prime Minister of Zygeria Atai Molech himself. Prime Minister Molech. Dar welcomed him. It's an honor to be privileged with your presence, my lord. Darth Nar, Molech regarded while looking around. I've been sent by the Queen herself to bring a clear message to all of her subjects who have operations like yours on Kessel. I suggest we talk about this in private. Of course. Nar nodded in respect. Let us go to my office. From there, you can see the whole operation for yourself. Nar then snapped his fingers, and a Pike member quickly walked forward to give them their air masks. Another mining accident, I presume? Molech frowned, putting on the mask. Unfortunately. Nar sighed. As profitable as this mine is, it isn't without its own set of problems. This mine is ancient, with many of its walls weakened from constant harvest. Despite the new reinforcements my slaves have built, it was only a matter of time before another mine collapsed. Any casualties? A few, unfortunately. We lost a few slaves, as well as 2 of fellow Zygerians, and even a couple of Pike members. Such a tragedy. Quite. The 2 Zygerians sat in a high room, surrounded by soundproof windows where they could see the whole mining operation down below, from the very top to the very bottom. Nar ordered a nearby slave to pour 2 glasses of wine for the both of them as he explained the extent of his operation. As you can see, I have over 50,000 slaves working non-stop, 24/7 on the job, finding, gathering, and transporting spice to the upper levels, where the processing teams will extract the Kesseline from the Kessel stones so we can sell the minerals for narcotics as spice. Nar stopped for a moment to down his glass, before he continued. That alone makes a good fortune, but really, it's the coaxium that's the real money maker. This was something that got Molech to raise eyebrows. Coaxium? That's a rare hyperfuel. Pretty dangerous too, but also very lucrative. Nar smiled. I've just discovered a large amount of that fuel is buried right beneath us. The minute this was discovered, I have prioritized its mining and doubled the workload for all of my slaves," Gnar said, not being able to contain his chuckle. He was now standing above a fortune that would last almost a lifetime of profits he could now accumulate, with an unending flow of slaves that were being brought in every day. Molech nodded, becoming quite impressed with the Zygerian's work. "I see that you've made some admirable progress, which puts the other slavers to shame with your successes," the Prime Minister said, looking back down at the area below them. He watched as a large group of slaves were beginning to line up. "Gnar, why are those slaves not being put to work?" "Oh, you mean those from the Terran sector? They are merely refilling their canteens before they go back to work," Gnar answered. "This particular group has earned their little reward, since unlike the other slaves like the Wookiees and the others from the Outer Rim, these slaves have been making much more progress in my mind than all the others." It wasn't very uncommon knowledge that humans were rather a popular race to enslave. Not only do they tend to last longer in a vast majority of climates, such as the sweltering one in Kessel, but they also tended to rival in physical beauty at times with the Twi'leks. It also helped that with all the human supremacy attitude that was spread across the galaxy, it was admittedly rather satisfying to put them in their places. It honestly seemed like his birthday when the Zygerian Empire heard about the planet Earth, a lush planet full of humans. When the Separatists began to forge alliances in that planet, it allowed the Zygerians to use the Separatist connections to sneak onto the planet to smuggle some of the humans out for their personal use. It was surprisingly easy, due to the fact that this planet had third world countries, which the United Nations put less attention and care into, and thus made it significantly easier to capture and ship future slaves. The two Zygerians stared down at the lineup as one particular blonde was about to have his turn at the front of the line. Outside of the cafeteria entrance, there was a large line waiting outside of an entrance to the inside of the mine, which led to the cafeteria. Instead of only waiting for food, however, these slaves were also waiting for their second refill for their canteens, which was pretty rare. The slavers called it their reward for their hard work, but the people knew better. They all knew that the slavers acknowledged that if they wanted the slaves to harvest more spice and the coaxium, they'll have to give them more food and water, otherwise, the slaves will die at a much more faster rate, and replenishing their numbers is always too troublesome, hence why the slavers made some effort on keeping them alive. In that line was Jimmy, who was talking to Tarek and Adric about the new mine that they had extended with some other slaves, making some serious progress by applying more support beams that minimized the chances of the mine collapsing again. It was thanks to the Mexicans' experience working in the mines that they thought of this, and after getting permission from their slavers, they were able to build the support beams. "Man, we're lucky that you knew your shit, Jimmy. If you didn't explain to that fucking Zig about the need for the support beams, more of us would probably die from another goddamn collapse," Tarek said to the Mexican with a handshake. "I owe you one, man. Don't thank me, amigo. Thank the Lord." Jimmy pulled out his cross necklace. "If it wasn't for his grace, then the whole ceiling would have collapsed." "You trying to convert me, Jimmy? Well, if I have a chance, Dash. Man, even on a different planet, you Christians and Muslims are still at it, huh?" Adric teased them. "Well, a man's gotta find a way to pass the time." That voice belonged to a very large man, who was covered head to toe in tattoos. His arms, legs, shoulders, and even the back of his head decorated by art, the only part of his body left untouched was his bald head and forehead. "Joseph." Jimmy walked up to him in shock as he extended his hand to him. "Good to see you're still breathing, amigo. I heard you were working down in the underground with the Wookiees." Joseph Ibarra was a fellow Mexican who grew up in the same school as Jimmy, but unlike Jimmy, who went to try and make an honest living, Joseph was someone who had a dirty history of smuggling dope across the U.S. border, which ended when he got into trouble with his last shipment. Before he knew it, he was sold off as a slave, and ended up in Kessel. Joseph shook his head as he gained some worried expressions from the others. "I'm the only one left alive. Kesseline gas came out from the wall, and all hell broke loose." Everyone winced when he mentioned the Kesseline leak. Much like Dioxys, if you breathed it in, you were a dead man within seconds. "So you mean Dash? I just finished dragging their bodies to their final resting place, if you know what I mean," Joseph said grimly, sounding very weary. Wasn't a pleasant task to do. Ain't it ever? Jimmy put a hand on his countryman's shoulder. Get in line, we're about to get our canteens filled. He pulled his friend in the line before anyone could say anything else. Meanwhile, up in front of the line, Naruto was just about to take his turn. He was waiting for Zeb to finally fill his canteen, waiting patiently for his turn. Never thought in my entire life that being in front of a water can would be the best day of my life, Zeb said, half smiling as he closed the tap of the water, before taking a sip from his canteen. Oh, that's good. If you don't mind, big guy, there's a line, Naruto reminded him, jerking his thumb at the growing line behind them. Hee, right. Zeb closed his canteen and walked out. Your turn, kid. Make every drop count. And just like that, after what seemed like forever, Naruto was in front of the line. After taking a moment to enjoy the reward of his patience, he stepped up to the water tank and turned on the faucet. While the water splashed and bubbled into his nearly empty canteen, Naruto found himself staring at the small, muddy puddle that sat near his feet. He could have been losing his mind, but he suddenly saw a younger version of himself smiling, with him being around Sakura, who was high-spirited as usual. Kakashi-sensei was giving his eye smile while holding his nasty book, while Sasuke was giving his usual gloomy look. The water began to hiss, and Naruto realized that it was almost full. Quickly shutting it up, he was about to recap his canteen, when someone roughly stepped in front of him, splashing the water all over his already dirty pants. He looked up, and saw that it was Sabine. Getting into his face, she snarled. So I heard you and the Earthlings got yourselves a special favor for rebuilding a whole mineshaft. Naruto just sighed. This girl was obviously trying to provoke him, and at this point, he was quite used to this behavior, even though he never understood what was the cause of their bad relationship. Well, got anything to say, kid? No, Naruto answered while trying to close his canteen. I'm just trying to get some water after some backbreaking work. So if you'd excuse me, dash. Like hell I will. She slapped the water canteen from his hand, and he watched in horror as it fell onto the dirty ground, most of its contents splashing all over their feet and the ground. Everyone gasped and jeered at the sight of the two of them fighting again. Someone in the background yelled at them to just kiss and make up, but both of them didn't hear it. Sabine took it a step further and grabbed the canteen, before spilling the remaining water right in front of him. Here, try and enjoy it now, filthy imposter. His expression blank, he bent down to his knee to try to touch the spilled water with his hand, ignoring the shoutings from his friends, who were demanding to know what was going on. You know what, Ren? What? This. Naruto suddenly scooped up some of the water and threw it onto her face. Caught off guard, she stumbled back as she tried to wipe away the sludge. Stumbling, she tripped over a large cable, making her fall onto the ground. Consider that a fucking warning, Naruto warned her with a glare. I normally don't hit women unless I have to. Coward! Sabine shouted as she kicked his leg, sweeping him off his feet as he fell onto his rear as well. This gave her the chance to jump right onto him, and began to punch him right in the face. I'm not some girl you think you can just slap around. Months of pent-up aggression and stress went into blow after blow, her small fists slamming into every inch of his body that she could hit. One of her hits landed onto his mouth, and when she retracted her hand, his lips were bleeding, much to her satisfaction. Her grin quickly faded as he suddenly grabbed her fist midair, and quickly twisted it slightly, causing a sharp, intense pain to erupt from her wrist. Arg! Seizing the moment, Naruto punched her in the face before flipping her off of him. Before she could have time to react, he quickly crawled on top of her as he grabbed her neck, squeezing it hard. Sabine gagged as she struggled to get him off of her, slammed her fists into his arms to make him release her, only for her to stop when she looked into the boy's eyes. They were cold. Just dark and cold, like it was death itself standing right in front of her. Was he really about to kill her in front of everyone just like that? It was then that she felt fear. Fear of dying. Fear of dying before she got a chance to even say goodbye to her family. The world began to turn black as she was running out of air. Zap! Suddenly, Sabine realized that she could breathe again. Coughing, she blinked the spots out of her eyes as she tried to process what just happened. Looking up, she realized that Naruto had collapsed, with a pike's guard standing over him, an electro staff in his hands. Stand back! The other Pike's guards ordered, driving them away with their own electrostaff and whips. Stand back, slaves! Someone grabbed Sabine's hair, and she cried out in pain as she was pulled up, forcing her to stand on her feet as one of the Pikes roughly forced her up. She could see the two other Pikes stomping on Naruto repeatedly to the point where he started to spit blood out of his mouth. Starting fights, aren't ya? The leading Pike sneered as he stopped the beating. Well, let's see how you like that now. No water for you for a week. He turned around to Sabine and pointed at her. And you. Don't think you'll get away with it. The both of you will be placed in the cleaning unit. Both of them now forced onto the ground on their stomachs. Sabine could only thank herself for this mess she got herself into. Now she was put a week without water and been given that task for a week. She wondered what the kid was thinking, especially when she saw him just staring into the ground like he didn't seem to care. That, or he had a concussion. Back to work, all of you! Gnar couldn't help but chuckle at the sight below him. And yet, that Elementia boy failed to finish off the Mandalorian. How disappointing. Molech was curious to know what he meant. You let your slaves fight against each other? Why not simply teach them a lesson? Oh, I do. Gnar shrugged, ordering his slave to pour himself another glass of wine. I'll let them work in the cleaning unit, although. Gnar let out a harsh laugh. I heard that they call it the grave unit. Rather fitting, admittedly, since for the most part, they are disposing of the dead bodies of the slaves at the bottom of the mine. Gruesome. Molech chuckled, before taking a sip of his wine. Placing his empty glass down, he let out a small burp, before he continued. Do you think you'll have enough workers for a small project? Gnar listened while pouring another glass for Molech. What kind of small project? If you didn't notice, I've already got my hands full at the moment. It won't take much for you and you'll get handsomely paid. Molech got up from his seat, and began to walk around, staring at the slaves below. There are certain individuals who are in need of a certain area where they could test their ideas in the dark, if you can say. So someone wants to use my slaves for experiments. Gnar quickly deduced. I suppose I can be generous. I am a man of science, after all. Still, it won't be for free. You'll be compensated, that I assure you. Molech told him. I just need to know if you're willing to contribute some space, slaves and equipment to these fine gentlemen. Molech said, remembering the conversations he made with these individuals, who wanted to keep this as secretive as possible. Should their plans ever be exposed to the Republic, or even the separatist government, they would face a lifetime in prison, assuming they weren't given the death penalty. Let's bring up a toast to this opportunity then, Gnar said, raising his glass to Molech's level. To progress. The glasses touched each other. To progress. Olam, level 50, the bottom of the sinkhole. The grave unit was a job that nobody wanted. Granted, no one wished to do any of the work here, but this job was one of the worst ones a slave could do. Tasked with the job of disposing garbage, which included the bodies of the deceased slaves, it always left the unfortunate slave feeling depressed after they were done. A body of a deceased Tigritan male was carelessly thrown onto a large, metal wagon, which looked ancient. Naruto flinched as he saw countless bodies under the Tigritan. Some were fresh, and some had been down here much longer than the others, with the stench being a dead giveaway. Even with the tied cloth around their mouths, the stench was still unbearable. Gagging, he shook his head, and tried not to think about it too much. Letting out a painful sigh, he let out a groan as he tossed another body into the conveyor belt, which led to the incinerator. Turning back to the wagon, he flinched as he saw one of the bodies staring at him. A Wookiee, whose head was split open, probably due to being beaten to death, had its eyes still open, which, despite the lack of life in them, was still staring into his soul. Shivering at the sight, he lifted his hand towards his face, closing them gently. Sorry. Ruto! Naruto turned around to see a man wearing an improvised gas mask over his head. Dressed in filthy clothes taken from the corpses, the man was huge, easily overtowering both Naruto and Sabine. This man was named Levi Laskov, although many just called him Bomber, due to only a handful of them actually knowing his name. Not many knew who he was or where he came from. The only thing everyone knew, however, was that he was the unfortunate one who was stuck working here for the rest of his life. Hey, Bomber! Naruto waved at him, before wincing. The Russian giant did not fail to notice this. Them zigs mess you up? He asked, already knowing the answer. She responsible for it? He jerked his thumb at her, who was currently loading another body onto the belt. Naruto nodded, and Bomber snorted. Lovebirds. Alright, time to get to work. Before Naruto could argue against that, a loud buzz rang through the air. They looked up, and saw more bodies falling from the sky. Some of them landed on the large, metal wagons, and some of them fell onto the floor with a nasty crunch. The next batch? Naruto asked stupidly. Bomber just nodded. No more words being needed, they both got back to work. The three of them continued to toss the bodies onto the conveyor belt in grim silence. Bomber made sure to count the fallen, while Naruto and Sabine made sure to keep the fire going and to help Bomber load the bodies. Okay. Bomber finally spoke, immediately grabbing their attention. We're done for this area. Time to move on to the next one. Right. Naruto and Sabine sighed in unison. They looked at each other for a moment, before they quickly looked away. 10 grueling hours have passed now, and yet somehow, Naruto was the only one that wasn't showing any major signs of exhaustion as he laid down another body onto the conveyor belt. That, however, didn't mean that he was enjoying the work. Naruto grunted as he massaged his shoulders, wiping the sweat from his forehead. This goddamn heat. Can't fucking get used to it. The operator just pulled on his filter mask, before turning to Naruto. Then you better be thankful that we're almost done for the night. I'll handle the rest here, so can you do one more run? We'll be done then for today. Naruto nearly cried from relief. They'd been working for almost 12 hours straight, with only a half-hour break in between. Yeah, sure, no problem. Good kid. Bomber nodded. He noticed that one of the carts was already gone. I guess the girl already took off. Go help her so that you'll be back upstairs sooner. Right. Naruto said, turning around. See you in a bit, old man. You would expect that the bottom of the pit would be a small area, but Naruto and Sabine learned the hard way that it was just as large as any other level. Naruto winced as he took another step forward. He realized just how much his feet and his body hurt from the whole labor, which somehow seemed much more difficult than mining for spice or fuel. On top of that, it's fucking creepy, he thought, glancing at the empty, filthy area around him. While seeing dead slaves wasn't exactly a new experience, there was at least plenty of other company around him that was alive, be it one of the slavers or another fellow slave. In here, however, you were mostly alone, save for the others that you could share your misery with. Sniff, sniff. Naruto froze, his tired muscles suddenly clenching up as he thought he had heard something. His minimal training kicking in, he began to silently walk towards the source of the noise. His ears now focusing on the source of the noise, his eyes widened when he realized what the noise was. Someone was crying, and it sounded like a girl, judging from the breathing and the restrained sobs. He walked over to where it was coming from, and saw that it was Sabine. Sitting against a metal cart, her head was buried in her legs as the woman was breaking down. Naruto, who was feeling pretty awkward, cleared his throat. Sabine's head shot back up, hitting her head onto the metal crate. Hissing in a foreign language he couldn't understand, but somehow, it sounded familiar. He had to hold back a chuckle as she tried to glare daggers at him. I guess you just needed a break, Naruto said, walking past her. He began to load up the bodies onto the metal crate. The work sucks, I know, so I get it if you need to take a break. What's wrong with you? Naruto turns his head towards her. Excuse me? Tears leaked out of her eyes as she hastily tried to wipe them away. We're in here just throwing bodies in these ovens to burn like garbage after they've been worked to death, and we're just dragging them around like they don't matter. Now standing up, she kicked the cart in frustration. The young man stood there awkwardly as the Mandalorian girl kicked out her frustrations, before sinking back onto her, but whatever fire she had was gone, replaced by just sadness. I'm stuck here with you, surrounded by stacks of dead people with no way out of here, she sniffed. I miss my family. Sabine couldn't hold it in anymore as she began to cry into her legs. I'm going to die down here, with my body joining the others into that furnace, with the last memory I have of my family is of that fight. Naruto bit his lip as he watched the tough, rowdy Sabine, the girl that always tried to start problems with him, began to finally break down, just like how he and many of them did at some point. I'm going to die. The coughing began to replace the sniffing. I'm going to die in this hole." The coughing sounded serious as she kept on going for a good minute. Naruto realized that she probably needed water, since the last time they drank was when they had that fight in the afternoon. Clunk. Sabine looked up, her eyes now bloodshot, and saw his canteen next to her. "What, Ash? Take a break," Naruto told her as he placed the last body into the cart. "We're done after this load, so let me handle it." He began to push the cart into the dark tunnel. "Wait." Naruto turned around back to Sabine, and she was about to ask a question. "Why are you giving me this?" she demanded, shaking the nearly empty canteen in her hand. "I didn't ask for your help." "Because you're in distress." "I'm not a helpless girl," Sabine growled. "A Mandalorian survives and adapts, and we certainly don't ask for any handovers. Then why the hell are you in here then?" Naruto snapped as he stopped pushing the cart, turning around to give the girl an irritated glare. "Because let me tell you, your stupid pride about being a Mandalorian and not taking handovers ain't getting you nowhere. And frankly, I'm starting to think you Mandalorians are more talk than doing it." Naruto was getting enough from this nonsense about this Mandalorian pride from what he was hearing, and now it came to this point where even a helpful gesture was seen as an insult. "And yet here we are." Naruto cut her off. "I don't know much about your people, but from what I heard, we both come from a heritage of warriors. Didn't really do us much good now, huh? The point here is that everybody needs somebody, and right now, you need me, just like how I need you and Bomber to help us clean up this cesspool, and try to survive another day." And with that, he turned back to shove the cart of bodies down the tunnel, stomping all the way. Sabine just stared at his shrinking figure, her eyes narrowing at his declaration of his past. Her fingers curled into a fist as she slowly followed him. Naruto's blank eyes stared as the last body was pulled into the flames, joining the rest of the fallen slaves to their disgraceful grave. He slowly looked away as he let out a sigh. "Ruto." Hearing his nickname, Naruto turned his head to see that it was Bomber, who removed his large mask. "I see you've finished your last batch. Where's the girl?" "Sabine." Naruto sighed at the mention of the Mandalorian girl. "She's waiting at the elevator. After she helped deliver the last batch, she told me she'd wait at the elevator for me." "I see." Bomber grunted as he reached for the controls below the conveyor belt. Pushing the big red button, the machine slowed to a stop, as its job was finally done for the day. "You can go now. I'm just going to double-check the machines in case I need to do some repairs for it again." "Need some help?" "Nyet." Bomber declined the offer. "You did enough for tonight. Go and try to get some sleep. You'll need it, and try and forget about this night." "Not sure if I can," Naruto replied grimly, refusing to look at the flames again. "This isn't something we do from where I'm from. My village only burnt the bodies of our enemies, not innocent people. Whoever thought of doing this is a monster." "You're telling me, my friend." Bomber chuckled without humor. "Bit of irony that those Ziggs gave me this job. My ancestors would weep in shame if they saw what I was forced to do." "What?" "Nothing, I'm just mumbling to myself," Bomber said, waving him off. "Just go now, I will see you tomorrow. Make sure to get plenty of food and water in your belly," the giant said as he walked to the back of the incinerator. "Night, Bomber." Naruto waved him off as he turned around and walked towards the mining elevators. If he wasn't so down and tired, he would have let out a small cheer at the fact that his shift was finally over. Sabine was standing by the mining elevators, waiting for Naruto to arrive so they could finally go back to their cells so they could try to sleep this horrible night off. "Sabine." She turned around, and without saying a word, she clicked on the mining elevator's door for it to open. The two humans walked inside, and Naruto wished that the elevator, which was large enough to fit about a dozen people, had chairs or something to sit on. Waiting for Sabine to go first, he pushed on the level he needed to go, and they silently waited for the elevator to take them to their designated area. The elevator groaned as it strained to move its large body and its two passengers up. The machine was ancient, with constant maintenance the only reason why it hasn't given out yet. Slam! Naruto nearly fell over as the elevator shook. Getting his balance back, he realized that they weren't moving anymore. He turned towards the controls, only to see Sabine yanking out a few wires out of place. "Sabine, what are you doing?" "Creating an opportunity," she said coldly. Stepping away from the disabled controls, she cracked her knuckles as she rolled her neck. You and I never finished that fight properly. It's time that we finally settle this. Oh, Kami! Naruto groaned. This wasn't over? Literally, woman, what is your problem? Shink! His eyes widened as Sabine pulled out a handmade shank from her pocket. It was nowhere near as dangerous and sharp as a kunai, but it looked like it would still do a lot of damage if she overpowered him. You're the problem, she snarled. You walk around sullying the name Uzumaki, as if you, a random nobody, could be from a clan of ancient Mandalorian warriors. If you really were from that clan, then where's your armor? They let me keep mine for some reason, but I heard nothing about your armor. So tell me, why shouldn't I stick this where it doesn't shine as punishment for sullying that name? Tired, trapped, and honestly fed up with this girl, Naruto just sighed as he got into a fighting stance. You know what? Fine. I can tell that you're stubborn like me, and that even if I somehow got out of this, you won't stop until you finally get your rematch. He slowly walked up to her, as she walked up to him. Just to let you know, I tried to be nice to you. But now, one of us is going down. Sabine responded by charging with a yell, going for the first blow by trying to cut him in the chest. Naruto dodged her slash and grabbed her arm, twisting it to force her onto her knee. The shank fell onto the cold, metal floor with a loud clang. But Sabine wasn't done yet. Reacting quickly, she kicked his leg with her other foot, which got him good. He let go of her arm, and she used this chance to grab the shank, before driving it into his shoulder. Fuck! Naruto roared as he backhanded her away. Gritting his teeth, he hissed as he ripped it out of him, before tossing it into the side. Crunch! Naruto saw stars as Sabine kicked him in the face. He flew back a few feet, and it didn't take a doctor to know that she fucking broke his nose. Come on! She roared at him. Are you a real Uzumaki? Or did you just pick up that name because you needed to feel important? Sabine stopped when he froze. She waited for him to strike back, so that she could counter him again, but something was wrong. He wasn't moving. Come to think of it, she wasn't moving either. She tried to move her legs, her arms, even her head. She couldn't move. What was this? Some kind of trick? Was she poisoned? Drugged? Or? Her eyes widened as her brown orbs met yellow. Glowing, sick yellow eyes, which seemed to stare into her soul, met her terrified brown ones. Slam! Sabine saw stars as something hit her head. Groaning, she blinked the stars away as she quickly tried to figure out what had just happened. Something was on her back. Something hard and cold. No, nothing was on her back. She was on something. She was stuck to the wall. Turning her head back towards the boy, her heart was struck with fear once again as his eyes stared hatefully into her soul. Her eyes traveling towards his outstretched hand, it suddenly hit her. He was a force wielder. Which must mean. Her thoughts were cut off as her body slowly left the wall. Despite the dark magic that was going on, however, she was still staring into those yellow, rage-filled orbs. Slam! Naruto thrusted his fist forward, and Sabine flew back onto the wall. She groaned in pain as she saw stars from the impact. Wham! 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 Saying nothing at all, the boy began to use the force to repeatedly throw Sabine back and forth into the wall behind her. Each impact was more painful, with each throw being stronger than the previous ones. It hurt. Everything hurt as Sabine began to lose consciousness. She was sure that she was going to die there. She was going to die by the boy that she antagonized endlessly, and she would die, knowing that she was wrong, and that this boy was a true Uzumaki. It didn't make sense. Nothing made sense really. How she got there, how he survived the bombardment, why his hair was the color of the sun, why she was going to die without even saying sorry to her family. Please. It was just a whisper. A small, faint, weak whisper, but Naruto somehow heard it, and stopped his assault, her body dangling weakly like a marionette in the air. Blood dripped from her face and mouth as she coughed, expelling a faint, red mist. Please! Using every little strength she had left, she slowly looked up at him. It hurt. It hurt to be reduced to this mess, to be begging for her life pathetically after everything she had done to try to hurt him. Let me go. Suddenly Naruto's eyes turned hollow as a sudden past memory came through his mind. Hinata was laid on her back with blood coming out of her mouth after being horribly beaten by her cousin Niji in the Chunin exams. Please. Hinata? Naruto muttered as his eyes turned to normal. W's Hinata? Crack. The ground around them suddenly began to shake as the elevator groaned, its support systems finally failing after all these years. Naruto's eyes widened as Sabine fell back onto the ground, barely alive. Sabine! Naruto shouted as he ran up to her, now fully realizing what he had done. Putting his body above her, he closed his eyes as he tried to summon the Kyuubi's chakra. Crunch! Crash! The elevator's final support system broke as he fell back down, bringing an avalanche of rocks, dirt, and spice with it. The last thing Naruto remembered was a loud, final crash, and everything went black. People ran as they tried to flee the continued collapse. People ran as they tried to help the others. The elevator crash was heard by everyone, both the slaves and the slavers alike. Without even asking for permission, they already left their beds to check out the damage, as well as to search for survivors. Out of my way, now! Tariq was one of technicians who rushed through the ground to figure out what had just happened. He jumped over the rails to look down into it. What the criff just happened? Dinar, who was coming down with his guards on his hovercraft, roared at the slaves. From the looks of it, the support beams must have finally given out, Tariq explained to the Zygerian. It looks like it took everything down around it, from loose rocks, spice, and anything else that was within 10 meters of the elevator shaft. Jimmy was the next to check the mine. He examined the damage top and down, and shook his head. That must have been 20 levels up before it went down. No one can survive that. I don't care about survivors. I want that elevator working again. Gnar spat at them. No one leaves, and no one eats until this place is cleaned up. Understood? That earned the Zygerian a lot of glares from the slaves, which he returned, challenging them to do something about it. It was a tense minute before the slaves eventually looked away, grumbling as they began to get to work. One day I will do this to him, one of the slaves said, gliding his finger over his neck. Let's not waste our time here. Adrik shouted, gaining everyone's attention. We'll need headlights, cables, shovels, carts, pickaxes, and anything else you can find. The faster we finish this shit, the sooner we can go back to sleep. Everyone was just standing there like a herd of sheep, until Jimmy came up and stirred it up. What are y'all waiting for? A tap on the back. Vamos! He barked at them, and the crowd scattered as they started looking for some equipment for the task that was waiting ahead for them. Naruto's entire body felt like hell, especially his shoulder. Blinking, he realized he couldn't see. Panic began to take over his mind as he began to hyperventilate. Oi Gaki! Calm the hell down! The Kyuubi's voice suddenly boomed in his head. Kyuubi? Naruto asked out loud. Yeah, it's me. You're welcome. The chakra monster grunted. Long story short, you used the dark side to kick that Ren girl's ass, and you ended up bringing down the entire elevator and everything else within several meters radius. You both survived, thanks to my chakra, but not only is she dying from her wounds you inflicted on her, but you're also stuck under all the rubble. What? Wincing, he slowly managed to push off the large slab of rock off his back. His body felt like he got hit by a spaceship, but he did his best to ignore the pain. Digging around his pockets, he pulled out a small, cool plastic tube. Breaking it in half, the glow stick began to do its job, illuminating the small pocket of space they were trapped in. He frowned, seeing that they were indeed trapped inside the remains of the elevator and the countless number of rubble. Great! Naruto held his head back, feeling a huge headache coming on. Just fucking great. That's not all, Kyuubi reminded him. Look to your left. The blonde turned his head to the left, and saw that next to him lay the body of the girl that he almost killed. Oh shit! Sabine! Naruto carefully crawled towards her, and gingerly rolled her over. This caused her to moan in pain, which made his hand jerk away from her. She looked terrible. She was bleeding from her head, which he was sure was cracked, and she was barely breathing. Each inhale and exhale made her whimper in pain, and he realized just how badly he ended up hurting her. Ah, fuck! Naruto cursed to himself, feeling helpless. Kyuubi, please help me. There might be one way you can help her, the nine-tailed fox finally said. Anything! He nearly screamed. All right. You'll have to listen to me very carefully. Tell me, how much do you know about the Force? The what? Naruto gulped as he took another deep breath. He had just returned from his meeting with the Kyuubi, with the fox telling him to retreat to his mindscape so that they'll have more time for the fox to describe everything to him. Seeing as how they had plenty of time, he decided to get some questions answered, like why he was quiet all this time. Naruto got pissed when he said that he wanted him to taste true suffering to help build his spirit, but he had to admit that the whole experience did help him grow up a bit. Remember, brat, the Kyuubi's voice echoed in his mind. You need to let the Force flow through you. Keep your mind at peace so that you can heal the ones you love. Naruto said nothing as he closed his head, placing his hands on Sabine's head. He could feel her suffering. He could feel her pain, her sadness, her fear. I'll help you just once, alright, brat? The Kyuubi said. After that, you're on your own. Naruto nodded as he began to meditate. It's okay. He spoke to her through the Force. It's going to be okay. Naruto stayed like that for a minute as he sat there on his knees, doing his best to use the Force. For one terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then, he felt it. He felt a wave of calmness and light coursing through his veins. Instead of feeling powerful, however, he felt calm. He was at peace. Sabine moaned, and he opened his eyes. Much to his delight and relief, he saw the blood receding back into her body. Bones clicked and cracked as they were being gently mended back together. Bruises faded and swellings went down. Sabine's whimpers of pain turned into sighs of delight. Naruto slowly lifted his hands and listened for her breathing. Her breathing returned to normal, which made him smile. Closing his eyes, he laid his head onto her chest as he fell asleep. Poke, poke, poke. Naruto grunted before his hands shot up. It grabbed something thin, but soft. Ow! Naruto! He blinked, and he realized that Sabine was the one that was poking his cheek. Sorry, he grunted, letting go of her wrist. She rubbed her wrist, wincing at how hard he had grabbed it. The two of them then fell into silence for a while, unable to say anything to each other, or even meet each other's gazes. I'm sorry! I'm sorry! The two of them simultaneously turned towards each other, and quickly shot out their apologies. When they noticed that they had both said their apologies in simultaneous haste, they looked away, embarrassed. I'm sorry for being an ass to you all this time, Sabine finally managed to say. I thought you weren't a true Uzumaki, and that pissed me off. This made the blonde raise his eyebrow. Wait a minute. What exactly do you mean by true Uzumaki? Hearing this, the Mandalorian looked back into his eyes. You really don't know, don't you? No, I don't. Naruto's shoulder slumped, his eyes drooping to her knees. I've been an orphan my entire life, with my parents killed minutes after I was born. Everyone in my life either refused to talk about my parents, acted like they didn't know, or claimed that they were nobodies. Hell, some of them even said that my mom was a whore, and my dad was a good-for-nothing drunk. Well, they're wrong, Sabine said quickly, her hands clenching on her knees. If I'm correct about where you came from, you belong to an ancient race of Mandalorians, who stayed behind on your planet to keep an eye out on an ancient monster that once lived there. At least, that's how the stories go. This certainly got his attention, with his gloomy expression turning into one of desperate, childish interest. I don't know how much of the stories are true, Sabine continued, but the one thing every clan can agree on is that at one point, the Uzumakis became one of the strongest clans on Mandalore, our home planet. They fought in the wars against the Jedi and the Sith, with them winning more battles than losing. Then at some point, they teamed up with the two factions to defeat a common enemy, which is why they fought and stayed on Elementia. Naruto looked at her for a moment with a strange expression on his face. So wait, why are you convinced again that I'm an Uzumaki? He asked her. It's not just because I kicked your ass, right? Sabine's eyebrow twitched at that, before she cleared her throat. No, it's because of how you beat me that I became convinced that you were a Mandalorian by blood. You see, one of the reasons why the Uzumakis were one of the strongest clans was due to their ability to use the Force. The minute you used it on me, I knew that you weren't just some yellow-haired idiot that decided to steal the name. Now it was his turn to grow a bit ticked, although he did his best to not show or express it. Can you tell me more about our culture? He asked softly. Sabine gave him a small, sad smile at that. I would, but maybe after we get out of here, she offered. I mean, we are running low on oxygen, so the less we talk, the longer we'll survive. Oh, right. The two of them sat in silence for a while, staring into each other's eyes. You have pretty eyes, Databale. Eh? So, what do you think brought down this old piece of junk? Joseph asked. Who knows, amigo? Jimmy just shrugged. It looked like every part of this thing was ancient. I guess it was only a matter of time before it gave out. They were at the lowest level of the mine with many others. Thankfully, the elevator wasn't the only way up and down these levels, which meant that more help was on the way. Well, this thing ain't gonna clean itself. Jimmy sighed. Come on, break over. Right. The two of them resumed picking up large rocks and debris, sweating profusely. It was a humid night, and their clothes were already sticking to their bodies. They were back to work for only a minute, and they were already panting like dogs. Be very careful. The two of them jumped at the sudden, gruff voice behind them. Jesus, Bomber. Don't fucking scare us like that. Jimmy groaned, clutching at his heart. Sorry. He breathed in and out after running up the stairs without a break, before he cleared his throat. I hope I'm wrong, but I think Naruto and Peach is stuck under there. We need to be extra careful cleaning up this mess. The two of them blinked, before they fully realized who he was referring to. Turning towards their colleagues, they began to spread the news of potential survivors in the crash. Bomber, meanwhile, stared at the pile of rubble with a grim look. Stay alive, kid. You're a survivor. Almost as if responding to his words, the rubble suddenly began to tremble. Everyone's eyes widened at this, and they began to scramble for cover. But not Bomber. He just stood there, prepared to help his friend out if needed. His feet began to move forward, when they froze in their steps. For a moment, he could have sworn that the rubble was levitating. It stopped when the rubble began to further collapse on itself. A large, metal beam fell on top of the growing pile, and the trembling stopped. Bomber just stood there, gobsmacked at what he just saw. Fuck, Naruto! Stop! Sabine hissed. Naruto, whose face was scrunched up from effort, finally let his arms drop, and the trembling stopped. He had just tried to use the force to lift the rubble off of them. Much to their displeasure, however, it only just made things worse, as the rubble collapsed on itself the minute he finally began to successfully lift the mess off of them. Fortunately, it at least gave them some fresh air to breathe in, but now the space had been reduced, leaving them very close to each other. Nose to nose, the two teens could do nothing but sigh in displeasure, as their situation had just turned from bad to uncomfortably worse. Well, Naruto grunted. What now? Your breath kinda smells, Sabine complained. So does yours, Databeo. He deadpanned. The two of them just stared at each other. Without warning, they closed their eyes as their heads leaned into each other. After what seemed like an eternity, the two finally parted. Panting, they stared at each other in wonder, stars in their eyes. Wow! Naruto breathed. Wow! She agreed, a small smile curling up her lips, before she sighed. What's wrong? I don't think we're going to make it, Sabine admitted, staring at the rubble around them. I never thought my life would end like this. I thought I'd die on the battlefield or something, not like this. Same here, actually, Naruto grunted. Being a shinobi ain't a pretty career either, let me tell you that. The statement wasn't meant to be comedic, but somehow, it made the Mandalorian girl giggle. Well, I guess we're more alike than we thought. Yeah, I guess so. Naruto chuckled. He began to cough, forcing him to turn away from the girl. Cough, cough, cough. Hearing his coughs grow eerily louder, she looked over his shoulder, and paled at the sight of blood splattering onto the ground. Naruto? Hey, hey! Sabine patted her palm onto his cheek. You okay? My cough, body hurts. He groaned. Some shit fell on me. Gulping, she slowly lifted the back of his shirt, and paled at the sight of his terribly bruised back. If what he said was true, then his back might have sustained more damage than she thought. Shit, 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 Sabine muttered, her eyes darting around, unsure of what to do. It's fine, Sabine, Naruto groaned. Should be fine. Should be fine? Are you crazy? You might be dying right now. Just the life of a shinobi, he grunted, spitting out some saliva and blood. The moment I signed up to become one, I knew what I was getting into. It's just a part of our lives. You get used to it. Stop talking, she whispered, tearing off a part of his shirt to wipe away the blood from his mouth. Just hold on, okay? I don't have much to lose, which just makes this much easier. He sighed, his eyelids growing heavier. I got no parents. Not many friends. Had to raise myself. Sucks that I never get to find out what they were like. His hand rested on his stomach, exactly where his mark was. Despite him being a Jinchuriki, even he knew that there was only so much they can do, especially with how much the seal allowed them to do so. Still, even now, he could tell that Kyubi was doing his best to keep his container alive, although at the moment, it was too slow of a job. Stop, Sabine whispered, her eyes shadowed by her hair and the dying light. You know, I meant it, Databeo. You're a good-looking girl. Once you get past that stubborn nature of yours, you're not pretty bad yourself. Took me too long to stop looking at Sakura. Damn, I was an idiot. Falling for a stupid fangirl. Fangirls, huh? Despite looming over Naruto's slowly dying body, even she couldn't resist a small chuckle. Back on Mandalore, she remembered how most of the girls in her class acted like good-for-nothing fangirls over the old ways, without even having any proper respect for their ancient culture. Most of them couldn't fight to save their lives, and mostly consisted of gossiping bullies that were more bark than bite. So, any decent female shinobis back at home? I can name a few. Naruto grinned painfully. There was Ino, who was fangirl, but was actually kinda pretty good. There's Tenten, who really liked weapons. Then there's Hinata. His words began to trail off at the mention of the Hyuga's name, which didn't fail to catch Sabine's attention. What about her? She was shy. He finally managed to say. Sweetest thing to probably come out of my village. Was always nice to everyone, even me. Was a bit of a crybaby too, now that I think about it. He stopped, and Sabine feared the worst, until she heard him slowly swallowing, wetting his throat. We, graduated the same year. Turned out, she had a fucking crush on me. Me, of all people. She was so innocent, but so determined. So determined to not be a weakling. She's strong. Naruto's eyes began to close as he was losing the battle to keep them open. Hey, Hey! Sabine shook his shoulders. Stay awake! You know what? You remind me of her a bit. Naruto smiled at her. I mean, you're not very girly, but you both got the same, cool determination. Got, same smile too. You damn charmer. Sabine let out a dry chuckle as she brushed his hair out of his face. Stay alive, and I'll make it up to you, okay? I'll take you up on that. He grinned before he closed his eyes, the darkness finally taking him. Blondie? Hey, Hui. Naruto, stay awake, buddy! Come on, stay awake! Naruto! Screech! A large sheet of metal was slowly lifted from the pile. A few rocks began to tumble, but Bomber and the rest of the team moved to quickly stop them, in fear of the small avalanche accidentally crushing the potential survivor. After what seemed like an hour, they had finally spotted the two teens under the rubble. Bomber looked like he was about to poke fun at the two teens cuddling, when he paled at the sight of blood covering their bodies. Over here! Bomber roared. Survivors! Get the stretchers! Naruto is wounded! The two teens were carefully lifted out of there by the Russian giant. Gently placing them on the makeshift stretchers, he watched as they were being taken away to their crude medical center. Sabine, who had just woken up, wearily reached out to Naruto, just as he was lifted away. A few miles away from Olam. Today was another beautiful morning for Nar. Stepping outside to enjoy the fresh air of Kessel's forests, his ears were filled with the sounds of loud construction. While to many it was a perfect way to ruin a morning, for the Zygerian, it was the perfect way to start one. Sipping his tea, he sighed in delight as he watched the slaves below him work endlessly. A new laboratory was being built on the edge of the forest, concealed by a large mansion that was also being built for Nar. While normally he would not go behind the queen, he would make an exception in this case. Despite his loyalty to the queen, he admitted to himself that she can be rather short-sighted at times, and was, if he must be honest, a spoiled bitch that can't think outside of her world. When the humans from Earth contacted them, they were admittedly a little concerned, worried that their illegal actions were discovered. Much to their relief, Instead of the government, it was an organization that wanted to strike a deal with them. All they wanted was a place to run their illegal experiments, as well as some test subjects to do the said experiments on. When the Queen asked them what they had to offer, they promised them not just drugs, but also an army of biologically enhanced slaves. The Queen, for a moment, seemed interested in the idea of using science to accelerate the process of obedience, but then decided to reject their offer, saying that Zygeria already had a powerful military as it is, and that their methods were adequate. Besides, she didn't want to risk getting the attention of the Republic, which would inevitably result in their army of Jedi bringing their glorious empire to ruin again. Fortunately for Dnar, the Prime Minister shared similar views with him, seeing huge promises in this research, and the two of them talked to this mysterious organization again in secret, and here they were. "Sir, they've arrived." A Pike member walked up to him. "Let them in," he commanded. The doors swung open as a group of men in hazmat suits walked in, carrying weapons and dragging in containers filled with supplies and force knows what with them. The filters on their faces made sure to not give away any part of their features, making them anonymous to the world. The one that stood out from the crowd was a young man in an expensive suit, who walked in with a confident grin. A large, black briefcase was in his right hand, which the Zygerian assumed and hoped was the money that was promised to him. "You must be the professor, I assume? Our sincere apologies, but no, I am his assistant," the human representative spoke, pulling something out from his suit. Kneeling to the ground, he placed the object onto the ground, and a holographic image of a professor appeared. His face and name tag was blurred out, with the rest of his body remaining clear as day. "Who are you?" Dnar demanded, his face turning into a scowl. "Mr. Dnar, for my own safety I had taken the necessity of sending my best man on the job to come to our facility and help oversee the construction of it." The professor's voice was scrambled, giving it a harsher, deeper tone. Dnar wasn't having this. "So you send a lackey here instead, Dash? Don't come to quick judgment like that, Mr. Dnar," the professor chided. "You out of all people must understand that individuals like myself cannot risk to be seen near planets like these. We on Earth are not that free of going around as you have that privilege, especially with my country's decision to join the Republic and my employer's alliances being on the opposite side. Well, can't fault one on being careful," Dnar grudgingly acknowledged. "We are all well versed in the art of politics, which has helped us get out of jams at times, but it is admittedly not my forte." The scrambled voice nodded. "I am a man of science, willing to do whatever it takes to unlock the secrets this universe has to offer. For that, I will have to thank you and your Prime Minister for granting me this opportunity." "I'm glad to hear that, but so you know, Dash," Dnar smugly remarked, "my services come with a cost." "Of course," the professor replied, turning to his assistant. "Give him the credits." The bald man nodded, before he lifted his briefcase. Opening it in front of the slaver, his mouth nearly salivated at the hundreds of thousands of golden credits. "Should our partnership continue well, we will deliver your weekly payments," the professor stated, seeing the greed in the Zygerian's eyes. The said Zygerian was barely listening, chuckling as he grabbed a handful of credits, feeling them with his hand. He was so entranced by the credits that he didn't seem to notice a few slaves walking by with some cargo boxes. One of those slaves, an old man who was here his entire life, looked at the partnership going on. He shook his head, before he resumed pushing the materials. Chapter end.
Now watch daily exclusive and censored lemon stories and mature content. Access all this and more on my Patreon. Click the link in the description to explore.